Yeah, closed session.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah,
Closed
okay.
meeting.
Yeah. Cool. Delete.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. I call to order the special meeting of the Manassas Park Governing Body for April 13th, 2021. Per the General Assembly's approval of the Governor's amendments to the biennial budget, the governing body may now meet electronically without a quorum actually assembled in a single location, and without the in-person governing body members voting on the participation of those who are remoting in. The following benchmarks for the meeting this evening have been met. First, the governor has declared a state of emergency for the current COVID-19 pandemic in accordance with Code of Virginia. Second, the declared emergency makes it impractical or potentially unsafe for the governing body to assemble in a single location, and guidance from state and federal government support this determination. Therefore, the governing body will be meeting with various members participating electronically through GoToMeeting. Third, the meeting is to discuss or transact the business statutorily required or necessary to continue operations of the governing body. Fourth, the governing body will make available a recording or transcript of the meeting on its website in accordance with Code of Virginia. Fifth, notice has been and will continue to be provided to the public using available methods. Lastly, we have made and will continue to make arrangements for public access through electronic means, including the ability to comment. Those participating electronically are Councilmember Hasib Javed and Vice Mayor Banks. Those participating in person are Councilmember Laura Hampton, Councilmember Alana Mensing, Councilmember Darrell Moore, Councilmember Yessi Amaya, and Mayor Jeanette Rischel. Okay, we have approval of the agenda. Actually, it is the amended agenda that we have before us. We will have a question and answer with our Treasurer, Commissioner of Revenue, and Registrar. That is placed as in 2A, followed by the next four, and then we will insert 2F, which is City Manager update on the Mosby Blighted House demolition. City Attorney has said there is no closed session. Yes.
Stop the meeting. We need to change the GoToMeeting. We think the link is wrong.
Okay.
So we need to restart that.
So we will hesitate. We'll pause the meeting?
Yes, if we can.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Sure.
think other people are trying to join.
Okay.
Yeah. Do we read out the song? Yeah. I'll do it. Okay.
Please enter your access code followed. To enable audio controls, please enter your audio PIN followed by the pound or hash.
Keith, is Hasib with us online on the phone? Because he said he would be calling in until he's able to get home and actually log in.
There's a caller two. I'm guessing we're caller one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hasib, will you call it too?
Yeah, I'm on the phone.
Okay, thank you. We're good to go? Okay. For those who just joined us, we are voting on an amended agenda. The Q&A with our Treasurer, Commissioner of Revenue, and Registrar is being inserted as 2A. The next 4 remain in place, and then 2F will be City Manager update on the Mosby Blighted House demo, followed by governing body budget deliberations. City Attorney has informed us there is no closed session. So do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. We have an agenda. Okay, moving on to Q&A with our Treasurer. And I would ask, even though I have no questions, but I would ask each of you to feel free to share with us anything that you would like us to take note of in your department, anything at all. So, yes, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Only thing really going on now is thanks to the police department, we are getting a lot more people in here to get their decals. And the collection, and Trevor can verify this, the last couple months have been really good. We've been, instead of outsourcing the collection, we sent letters out ourselves, and that seemed to get the people that live here a little bit riled up and come in and get their decal. You know, we may not be popular, but that's what we do here. So other than that, we're all good. Any questions?
Okay. Councilmember Amaya?
No, not at this moment.
Councilmember Moore?
Thank you for your presentation. No questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Mensing?
No questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Hampton?
Yep, I got one quick question. With the advent of the part-time parking enforcer, do you anticipate even more increases in people coming in to get their stickers?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And how much has the increase in the volume since last year compared to this year? Just ballpark, like 0 to 25, 25 to 50%?
I'm gonna say probably about 25%.
Okay.
And right now, it's really high.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Javed?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Banks?
Can't hear your audio.
Can't hear you.
We still can't hear you, Preston.
Check the volume on your laptop or your tower, whatever.
Well, if he's saying no questions, thank you.
Okay,
Read it.
okay, thank you. Okay, thank
Good
you.
skill to have.
Our Commissioner of Revenue?
Oh, can I? Briefly?
Yes.
I just want to clarify, so the parking enforcement position, that's a full-time position. We budgeted half-time in 21 because it was a mid-year budget change, but it's a full-time position. The code enforcement that we put in FY 22, that's a part-time. Yeah,
Okay.
that's a part-time position. And then also, I forgot to mention this for the new council members at the last meeting. When you get your budget book next Tuesday, it's going to have a breakdown and a description of these line items as well. So I've noticed with some of the questions we've been getting that it's things that are covered in the budget book. So please rest assured, you're going to get more detail for each department's budget request as well. So I just want to add that point.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner of Revenue? Thank you.
Good evening. I really don't have too many changes in my budget request. A little bit more for postage, as most of you probably already know, postage went up. We have an increasing population, so more mailings. And the only other thing that I asked for was to move some salary savings to my two people who have been here for a while. I sent you all an email. I know you haven't had time to look at that and digest that, but please feel free to send me questions by email if you want clarification or need more information or anything like that.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hampton? Councilmember Mensing?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Moore?
Thank you. Yeah.
Councilmember Amaya?
Questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Javed?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to mention that, since we've been sending out a lot of letters to the public, how that affected your department.
Well, I sort of disagree with Patty. I think it's way more than 25%. probably had a line for the past 6 weeks, from when we open all the way through the day. And in between that, the phones are ringing off the hook and emails coming through about questioning the bills associated with their personal property so that get their decals.
Okay, Councilmember Javed? Do you have a follow-up?
No follow-up, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor Banks? No questions? Shake your head yes if you have no questions. Oh, you do have questions, okay.
Maybe that's fixed.
We still can't hear you.
He doesn't have any questions.
Okay. Thank you. Our registrar? Thank you.
Good evening. We have a busy year coming up for us in our department. We're excited about that. Redistricting is coming up this year. Also with the move in the future, sending out all new voter cards because of our location change. So that's a big project we're going to be undertaking. Also, in case you haven't heard, the budget was approved by the governor today. So the drop boxes will be back for June, starting permanently in June. Also, dropping it off in person. There's also postage that's going to be paid on all of the return absentee ballots. So we have a lot of different things coming through that are going to pass this year and make us busy. So.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Javed, do you have any questions?
No questions for me.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Banks? No questions. Okay. Councilmember Hampton?
No questions.
Councilmember Mensing? No questions. Councilmember Moore?
Thank you, Patricia, for your report. Good seeing you.
Councilmember Amaya?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate all three of you ladies coming this evening for Q&A. Thank you. Okay, moving on to a high school and police station roof discussion and question and answer time with the contractor. And we thank Mr. Neff and Mr. Simpson for being with us this evening. Thank you.
So good evening, governing body and members of the public watching this evening. So we did post on the website with some background documentation about these two projects. They're very different projects. Initially, we thought there may have been an opportunity to do kind of a joint project. Mr. Giddens, who's joining us this evening, you can see on the screen there, he did do an initial evaluation of our police roof, and he determined that it's more of a leak repair than an actual full-on replacement. So you saw the proposal there for the next step, which is a more comprehensive evaluation, and that's something that we're still reviewing and discussing, Mr. Giddens, but it's looking pretty good that we'll be moving forward with that over the next couple of months here to shore up the pricing for the roof repair, which is in the FY22 budget already. And then also provided to the governing body and posted on the website was the proposal for the high school roof. We have members of the high school team here, I'm sorry, the school division here to answer any questions, along with Mr. Giddens, who's joining us via GoToMeeting to ask any questions you may have of these two projects.
Does Mr. Gibbons have a presentation?
No.
Of any type? Okay.
No, just what we provided to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
You sent him my questions. Is he prepared to answer those?
We sent you the answers already in the email.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't receive the email.
Yeah, that was an email that I provided to you. I'll get that.
A couple hours ago?
A couple hours ago.
No, this was yesterday, I thought.
Yeah, I remember seeing
Yeah.
that.
I think it might be illuminating for the public to hear some of the responses.
It absolutely would.
We can do
Yeah.
that. So,
Okay.
I guess we can turn over. Mr. Giddens, do you have
Yes.
anything to add or present tonight? Or
Welcome, Mr. Gibbons.
Thank you all for having me. I tried to respond to all the questions in the email. You have copies of that in front of you? Or?
Yeah, I can pull it up. Why don't I print a copy and then you guys can have it.
Yes.
Okay.
You want to give it to
Well, and I think Councilmember Moore is correct. Our intention is also to have those questions answered for the public.
I can read the answers if you like.
Oh, is this a handout?
I printed it out.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah.
Oh, you already printed it out, okay.
Yeah, I brought it in.
Okay.
She wants to read
You
it.
want us to make copies of that?
Well, I think it'd still be happy
You wanna
good to go
read it?
over them.
Yeah. Well, one of my questions, Mr. Gibbons, was you indicated that the steel decks are in good condition, and that's good news. If, however, some unfortunate, if it was misfortune that they were not in good condition, how would that be handled? Would there be a special contingency? Would it be handled under the normal contingency? How would that unfold?
So in the contract, we include unit price allowances, where I basically estimate a small amount of repair, and that's included in the contract. So we'll say we may have a code for small patching of small holes in the deck. We may include 20 locations in the contract. And then, so that's already built into the contract. So it's not going to be an additional cost to you unless we went over that quantity, but we try to overestimate that quantity such that at the end of the project, if they haven't used it, it's credited back to you. Mm-hmm. So we have a couple of codes in there, basically one for small repairs and one for larger repairs, mm-hmm. and we've estimated a quantity.
Okay. Okay. Also, during your presentation to the school board, you said that it is possible to do it during part of the year. Now, of course, that would not be the way that any of us would want to go, but if for some unforeseen reason, it would have to run into the school year. Can you elaborate as to the type of coordination that would be needed?
Yeah, well, as I alluded to in my email, I found this to be more prevalent in the last few years. I mean, one, because of COVID, but also there seems like these summer construction schedules are getting compressed even more. So we've had to do some coordination on various projects, and it just takes a lot of back and forth communication with the people at the school. I mean, like I alluded to in the email, if we can focus our efforts on the classroom areas when we first get in there in the summer and try to take care of those, because that's typically where you would be the most disturbing to operations in the building, and then sort of leave areas later in the project, like say the athletic wing or areas where you're not having classroom instruction. You know, we can work with the contractor to figure that out. Also, they probably will have replaced most of the membrane. It's just the miscellaneous work that goes along with it. There's a lot of sheet metal work that goes on and miscellaneous work that happens all over the roof. So, you know, we can try to get the bulk of the work done over the summer with the understanding that we're just going to have miscellaneous work going on. And also remember that we can also request the contractor say, hey, the kids that are going to be here from 8 to 2, can you do a certain amount of work during that time period that's not noisy, and then shift to that after the kids leave? Or, you know, something, we'll work it out. I mean, the contractors are usually pretty reasonable in that regard.
Okay, thank you. Also, in the document, you make reference to no recent maintenance nor leak repairs performed. How do you define recent?
I mean, that was based on my conversations with Paul, and I would say, I think what we're referring to is over the last 5 years. I mean, I don't think we said there were none. It was that there wasn't necessarily a detailed record of it, but Paul had indicated that there were numerous instances of leak repairs. Mm-hmm. I mean, Paul can elaborate if he wants to, but I tell every jurisdiction that it's always good to try to maintain accurate records, but that very rarely happens because it takes sort of a day-to-day input from the people at the site. But if there's a way to maintain detailed records, it helps people like me when we're coming in and looking at this stuff after the fact.
Mm-hmm. And also, I believe there was a mention that there were 6 active leaks every year for the past 10 years. Do we know how those leaks were dealt with? Were they minor repairs? Was a bucket put down? I mean, how was that dealt with? I'd
have to defer to Paul again on that. So, Paul, I don't know if you want to chime in on the...
Do you want to come to the microphone? Thank you, Mr. Simpson.
So that was an average that I came up with, is 6 per year. So what's happening lately is the seams are separating. The glue is actually breaking down and separating. We will fix those seams and come back a month later, 10 feet down from that seam, it's happening again. So 6 was just an average that I had in mind. Blake has enlightened me about keeping a record of my roof. Honestly, I never considered that, but I understand that's not a bad thing now for the future. So yeah, the leaks have been, some have been minor, some have been really bad.
Okay.
The library has some really bad leaks. So that area was rough. We have a couple of classrooms on the third floor of the newest edition that has some bad leaks as well.
Okay.
The big ones are addressed, but there's always the small ones that are popping up. The roof is shrinking. You can see the membrane pulling off the side of the walls. So it's in rough shape.
Yeah.
And I think Blake will agree that we've got our money's worth out of this roof. It's beyond its life expectancy at this point.
Yeah, I read the report. I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. And my last question is on PDF page 28. The folks at home may have looked at this report. The Mount Vernon sample cost estimate sheet listed mobilization and demobilization cost estimates to be a bit less than $13,000. Are we correct in assuming these costs would simply double if the project were divided into two phases, or are there other factors involved with that? Mr. Gibbons.
Yeah, I think I should just read you my response that I wrote. Which question number was that?
It was question number 4.
Okay. So in response to your first question about if the projects would double, I think it's more complicated than that. In terms of the accuracy of the mobilization and demobilization cost, what I wrote was, this is kind of a difficult question to answer. Our estimates are based on a certain formula spreadsheet. However, in working with numerous contractors over the years, it seems as if every one of them takes a slightly different approach to cost estimating. So to answer your question, it's difficult to compare our estimates to the contractor's cost because they don't typically use the same methodology or schedule of values. So that may sound like I'm sort of dodging the question, but what we're trying to do with that line item is just sort of capture their sort of overhead costs. And you know, every contractor sort of has a different way of going about it. So it's hard for me to compare apples to apples. Does that answer your question? There were some other responses, I guess, in regard to that they would need fencing. Yes, I agree with that.
That's so for the folks at home, when this is an expensive project, so we want to make sure that the folks at home are as informed as possible. That's why I wanted the questions to be answered publicly.
Sure.
The question on fencing, so the fencing is a part of the staging costs?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, the answer is yes. Okay, thank you. What other costs are associated with dividing the project into two phases? I mean, just rough estimates are, like what would be involved with that?
Well, like I referenced in my answer, the biggest factor is material costs. I mean, material costs these types of projects are very heavy on material cost. And when a contractor solicits pricing from a manufacturer, they're not giving them guaranteed pricing for 2 years. So they either have to make the decision to purchase all of that material up front and store it, which is expensive, or roll the dice and hope that the pricing they have to purchase the material for the second phase is equivalent. So what they'll typically do is include some sort of estimated escalation to the second phase of the project, the materials in the second phase. So that's what can really drive the increased cost when you phase it out like this.
Okay, also on page PDF 28, you list $12,000 for general conditions. What is that?
It's just miscellaneous costs associated with administering the contract. And again, like I said before, it depends on how a contractor structures their estimate, but it might be permitting fees or, you know, administrative fees and things of that nature. It's not a very exact figure. It's just something that we base on, you know, previous estimates. You know, I will say, in terms of this cost estimate, I think I referenced that when I previously met with you all. I do believe this estimate is conservative. So I am anticipating these costs coming in below these numbers, but I don't want to give you a number that's way low, and then we're back here in a month and you're like, why are our estimates, all way higher than what we anticipated. So I'm trying to be conservative when I'm giving you these cost estimates.
Okay, well, thank you. And you've never met with us before. This is the governing body. We have not.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm referring to the previous meeting. I don't remember the exact context of it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you for your answers. Now let's move on to other governing body members. Councilmember Hampton?
No.
Councilmember Mensing?
No questions.
Councilmember Moore?
No questions.
Councilmember Amaya?
Just a small one. There's on the options 1 and 2, there's a manufactured 20-year no dollar limit warranty that can be obtained for relatively small additional fee. Do we have an idea how much that would be?
It's usually just a few $1,000s, like a couple $1,000s. It's not a huge figure. I mean, we almost always require that they submit a warranty for a project of this size and scope.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Javed? Hasib, are you with us? Okay, Vice Mayor Banks, do you have any questions? We still can't hear you. Your microphone's green, but we can't hear you. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I just have one last question. If the roof were done all at once, it would be one warranty. If it were done in two phases, there would be 2 warranties. Is there an advantage to having only one warranty as opposed to 2?
Actually, it would be one warranty. If you did it in consecutive phases over 2 years, they would give you one warranty.
Okay, it would not be broken down into 2 warranties.
No.
Okay, thank you.
No.
Thank you. We very much appreciate you coming this evening, Mr. Gibbons. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson, and thank you, Mr. Neff. Yeah.
Do you all feel comfortable deciding by next week or the 27th which option to go with? I just want to clarify that before we let them go. There's 2 options for the roof, and they both have significant budget implications.
Right. Do we need time to think about it, or is everyone able to make a decision this evening?
I'd rather wait till the 27th when the school board makes their
Okay.
I just
presentation.
want to make sure you feel comfortable you have it out there.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, we do. Okay, thank you. Okay. Moving on to the next one would be police budget presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, governing body. Thank you for the opportunity to present the police department's FY22 proposed budget. This is kind of an outline how the budget's going to go. This is the overall FY22 budget overview. Discuss briefly about the revenue expenditures, per capita spending, some of our grants that we're applying for, the updated police department organizational chart, staffing and positions, some departmental needs, and some staffing planning for the next 5 years. And let's go over briefly about our stats for the FY 2021. As you can see on there, we do have a slight increase in our revenue we're anticipating. That's due to we're anticipating some court fines and parking fines, increasing that, and bus violations, school bus violations, with school starting to go back into in-house school. And then our e-citation program with the parking enforcement officer being out there, we're anticipating more in that program and increasing revenue. terms of expenditures, we're looking at about 3% increase overall for FY22. A good portion of that is the 3% increase that city manager proposed for this year, including benefits, full-time parking enforcement officer, and accounts receivable positions. We did increase slightly the overtime budget. That's due to short staffing, not being able to hire individuals, training that we had to put off over the years, additional court appearances. Our officers our arrests are up, criminal offenses are up, so our officers are spending a little bit more time in court. And then some other areas where we saw a slight increase be professional services. There's some things that Department of Criminal Justice requiring now for applicants of officers that we're trying to do with 21st century policing, maintenance and service contracts. We saw some increase, slight, not something major, and our operating supplies with costs going up with demand. We saw an increase in that. So we're looking at approximately $141,000. About $80,000 of that is pretty much the salary adjustments that we're going to make with 3%. When we discussed per capita, we're a little bit low, and I believe the number's a little bit lower now because of the adjustments of the year's budget we did. So I think we're about 248 the last time I checked. But we operate about 39% less in the area average. And we took into consideration Fairfax City, Town of Culpeper, Falls Church, Town of Herndon, Indiana, and Manassas City. Manassas City a little bigger budget, but we put them in there since they're our neighboring jurisdiction. These are some of the grants we put in for over the years that we've been awarded. Narcan grant, which is done through us, Justice Assistant Grant. We always get that. We always put in for $15,000 when we only get $3,600. I'm hoping they'll expand it and allow us to put in for different things that we can purchase with that, but we can only get at least a $3,600 a year. DMB, we've always gotten that. I think we did a slight increase this year to $35,500. And then the ICAT, Internet Against Crimes, we don't do it full time. That's something I would like to get more involved in. So we get about $6,000 there for overtime equipment that we might need to investigate that, because we can't do it on our city computers and stuff. So we're always got to be updating the software on the computer. And then we recently were awarded about $50,000 through DCJS for the body-worn cameras. Although we already had the program since 2011, they're giving money to be able to support agencies that already have the body-worn cameras. So we were awarded that. We're working now with our vendor to adjust our payments and try to figure out that on the out years for our contract to get that award. And then we talked with the grant writers about the COPS grant. That's the only way you can unfreeze positions and hire new officers. So we're submitting that grant. Once it opens, we haven't heard. Speaking to the grant writers, they think we're a good candidate based on our position as a city. So we're hoping that we get that, and that covers about 75% of their salaries for 3 years. Mm-hmm. So hopefully they'll only open up in March. I'm not sure why they haven't opened up yet. This is a FY22 organizational chart for the police department. We added the parking enforcement officer that would be assigned to our patrol division, and the accounts receivable person would be in the civilian side under the administrative division. All the other ones stay the same. It does reflect our vacancies that you can see, like our animal control and the 2 officer positions. We're still, having challenges hiring and keeping people. Even with the adjustment we had in the fall, we lost 3 senior officers, or actually 2 senior officers. One of them only had about 3 years on, but one had 10 years on, and the other one total law enforcement close to 17 years with our agency and some other agencies. One of the driving factor is pay, but also we're looking at that they offer more stipends for certifications, education, type of training they have if they're trainers, and also the benefits is a big one. The amount of money that they have to contribute to their benefits is a deciding factor, seems like, when I talk to them. To get us up to the area average, we're looking at about $226,000. City manager has a plan in the out years to be able to get us to that point, so we're excited about that. But we're also, need to bring up that in order for us to keep up, we still need a merit increase every year, because if not, we're going to fall behind. So When we did the pay study with HR, we did take the Falls Church and Manassas City into consideration when we did our own survey for salary adjustment. We took on some other higher agencies because there's no way we could pay that kind of money to our employees.
Okay.
With the police ratio to citizens, we operate about 1.7. The area average, they recommend a 2.5. Realistically, to do that, we would need 11 plus officers. As you can see, not a whole lot of these agencies are at the 2.5 marks. Fairfax City, they're able to get close to it. So the area average right now with those agencies is 2.4, and we're about 1.7. These are unfunded police needs. I just thought I'd point them out. Obviously, unfreezing the 2 positions in the animal control position. The communication specialist right now, we operate our communication specialists, our Ferguson Communication Center with just 1 dispatcher on a 12-hour shift. We do sometimes have an overlap during the day, but we would like to get 2 people in there because the amount of calls that come through there and if anything critical happens, it's too much for 1 person to handle. And for safety reasons, we would like to increase that one up to having 2 dispatchers in there 24/7. The crime analyst, I know there's been discussions on why do we need it, but right now, we do all that ourselves. We do our media management by ourselves. I used to have an officer, and I still have one of our captains that does it, but the officer has left. So that captain, so we don't get to be able to upgrade our social media for incidents or concerns or respond to citizens that ask us questions on our social media platform. That position would help us out a lot in keeping up with that and maybe monitoring when we do have something happening within the city that they can monitor social media, see what people are saying, so we can start reaching out to those people and see what they saw or didn't see during the incident. Sexual assault detective, we talked about this. The amount of calls that our officers average a year is close to 38 sexual assault cases a year. In calendar year 20, our investigating unit investigated 120 cases. About 40 of them were sex crimes against children or some type of sex crimes, which is a lot, I think, for a city this size and population. There's specialized training that these detectives get that they have to go to and have a relationship with the Department of Social Services and the court systems. And we can't just throw anybody in there. We have to have somebody that's trained, that has that rapport with them, and especially can interview small children or any sex crime victims. Property and evidence officer and training coordinator. Right now, I have command staff that pretty much handles our property and evidence, which is very important for the agency because that's property from victims, suspects that we have to maintain. And with the amount of duties they have and having told them this on top of it, it makes them have to work longer hours trying to figure things out. I feel sometimes things fall through the cracks or don't get done in a timely manner because they're multitasking into other areas. The training coordinator, it seems like that's a full-time job now with all these new guidelines that are coming out of what officers need to be trained in and all that. And I think this position will help out a lot. And they can do both, do the property evidence and do the training. And that'll give us the ability to have somebody there Monday through Friday. So if a citizen comes to take a property that we might have located or taken, that we were able to give it to them in a timely manner. One thing I did when we started losing some people again after we did our adjustment is start calling around agencies to see how they're handling laterals of officers. And one of the things we know is that they're offering stipends for education, military, certifications, years on service. So that's why I think, it's a low number, but I think it would be a good place for us to start. And maybe we can at one point offer that to our officers currently. Because a lot of these classes that we send them to requires them to keep the certifications up and continue their education as they go on. I kind of mentioned earlier that to get us to the area average, the salary adjustment that we would need about 226. So unfunded needs were about $666,000 that we would need to move forward. This is our staffing that we're projecting 5 years. We would like to see some of these positions be added, which would be unfreezing the 2 positions, maybe in FY23 around 24. and maybe continue adding one after every year after that, depending on, obviously, on budget, where we stand as a city. I would like to see and add another school resource officer to our schools and have one on every campus. Because right now we have one that goes to both campuses, or actually all four. It's just 4 different schools. But at least if we can have one on that campus down there and one at the one on Cougar, that would help. Adding the detective, of course, the animal control position, and maybe in FY24 adding another records clerk. Give us more admin support at the police department. The crime analyst, which we spoke about earlier, property and evidence, adding the dispatcher. And maybe we're looking at potentially when the downtown development is completed, adding another parking enforcement officer. So our stats for FY20 and FY21 through the third quarter, as you can see, calls for services are up. Or through the third quarter, we have another 3 months left. And I think we're going to exceed the 26,000 mark on that one. For patrols, we're pretty close from already for FY20. Traffic arrests, we're climbing up there. Criminal arrests, as you can tell, through the third quarter are up close to 200. So arrests are up. Parking tickets, obviously with the city decal and some other complaints we get for people parking illegally, our tickets are up already through the third quarter, close to 1,500, 800 or so. And this is a graph showing where we're at in FY20 and where we're at close to FY21.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you very much. Councilmember Amaya, do you have any questions?
Not at this moment, no.
Councilmember Moore.
Just one question, Chief, and I appreciate your presentation. The unfunded police needs that was listed in the chart, do these include salary and benefits, the totals that are listed here?
No, sir. I don't believe I did. No, I just did the actual salaries.
Those are just salaries? Okay.
I put it somewhere where they would be if we got somebody maybe that had a year or two on, or roughly it would be. So but obviously we have to send them to the academy, never delay them, to get them on the street close to a year.
Sure.
So I'd like to get somebody, if we got to that point, that's certified that we put them on the street earlier.
And then my final request, and I know tonight we're just talking about budget, but you say crime is up.
Yes.
And we'd love to see a detailed listing of what types of crimes are up. Is it auto theft, burglary, serious crimes, rape, homicide, just the categories of crimes that are used.
I'm actually going to provide Mr. Palco the third quarter stats for the department, so I can forward it to him.
That would be great if you could. The presentation would be wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate that, Chief.
My question kind of piggybacks off that. What do you just guess? Is it because people are home? Is that why crime is up? Is it?
Yeah, people home being too long at home.
Yeah.
Crime's up.
Okay.
If we look at our neighboring jurisdictions, then crime's up.
Does it correlate with when COVID started, kind of? Is that? Because I heard it's up all over too. I was just wondering,
It just seems like, I don't know if it's COVID. It's
Yeah.
just different, it feels different, I guess. But yeah, we noticed that last year, if I could just get you the stats, I could tell you what areas, but we did see an uptick, in domestics last year when people were home. A lot of vehicle break-ins, and that was one of the big things we saw. The city larcenies. We had a couple armed robberies, we solved them. That was last year. So this one right now, a lot of people are just, for drugs, driving on vehicles, stuff like that.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Chief, I remember in the past that there was an effort to have more law enforcement in the schools interacting with young people so that young people are comfortable interacting with law enforcement. When things get back to normal again, do you have a program that you would like to initiate? Do you have anything in mind?
What I would like to do, since we don't have these school resource officers, is require officers that go during their shift to stop by the schools and walk around the hallway. But I would need school support on that too.
Okay.
But that would be a way that we can start doing that again.
Yeah.
I remember years ago I would go and eat lunch with the kids over at Cougar.
Yeah.
I was in investigations on the sat down to ask me questions.
Yeah.
So it was really-
It would be nice to get the schools buy-in on that, because I think that's important. You know, we don't want a situation where when young people leave this protected, loving environment that they're in here in Manassas Park, and if an officer goes to ask them a question, the last thing we want them to do is run. You
I
know?
agree. I think we need more positive contact.
Positive contact, exactly, yeah. Thank you.
Not when they need us.
Not when what? Right, yeah. Thank you. Councilmember Hampton.
Chief, first I want to thank the force for protecting us. Also, I want to thank the 2 officers that came out last Saturday to wrangle that unwell raccoon. I know that's beyond your normal scope, but I appreciate it because I honestly didn't know what to do. I don't know how to wrangle a raccoon. A couple of my questions I had to ask was, what are the trends that you're seeing or think that will be occurring that will affect law enforcement? And those trends can happen at a national, regional, state, or local level.
In terms of what, in policing or?
Just overall, because I just think there's got to be something out there that will impact how you're doing your jobs, and that eventually will trickle down here because you might need some extra support, or whether that's monetary support or else otherwise.
I believe one of the biggest ones is going to be the use of force and de-escalation. I think there's going to be a lot of restrictions and how to do it, and a lot of guidance from the Department of Criminal Justice how we move forward.
So it would,
in terms of, how we arrest individuals, how much force can be used, stuff like that. I think there's going to be a lot of legislation that's going to come through that, yes.
and that would mean, of course, require more training, different types of training.
And that's one of the things with COVID. It was hard for us to have some of our training. We had to postpone, our less lethal training and stuff like that. Even our qualifications, we couldn't keep people confined in a small area. So we got a lot of work to do. We got to catch up, So we're hoping this year we'll be able to have this type of training and add more de-escalation to our program. We already do now, but I want to ramp that up. Not everything has to be forced, There's more, and actually another training is going to be that co-response unit. I had a meeting today with some of the Princeton County Health Department that, the program in Princeton County is working, well, and they want to expand it to the city of Manassas, city of Manassas and Manassas Park, which would require, for us to hire additional staff and have a health professional right around our officers. So they're trying to figure all that out. There's talks about funding, but I'm not sure the funding's going to go to public health, or is it going to go to the police departments to fund these positions.
We are going to apply for grants specifically for mental health professionals to join us and do exactly that. What Chief was referring to there was a CSB.
Okay.
Again, as a shared entity, but they've been supporting Prince William Police with mental health professionals. I think that's funded by the county.
Yeah, that is funded by I asked the chief over there, and that is funded by them.
So it's not something that they're using our money for, but so if that's something we want to do, we have to put the funding for it. We'd like to pursue grants for that. We have a feeling there's going to be more and more money from the federal government for that kind of purpose, so that is something we're looking at.
Okay. And then my other question is, what happens if the grants don't come through? The grants that you laid out?
Well, the ones that I pointed out, the only one that we wouldn't get that we haven't gotten in the years would be the cops grant.
Okay.
We never put in for it before, so we didn't have the ability to pay the 25% for the first year. But I think, we're in a better position now. We should be able to.
Okay.
That's my goal.
All right. Well, I'll keep my fingers crossed.
We haven't budgeted out in FY 23 or 24 to unfreeze. I'm looking into unfreezing these positions. So if we don't get it in FY 22, there's a possibility 23 or 24 we'll be able to.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Councilmember Javed, questions or comments? Councilmember Javed? He may still be in transition.
Or someplace where he can't get off of mute.
Yeah. He may have lost cell phone call.
And that does happen.
I'm sorry?
I said we still have caller 2, which I thought he was.
Okay. Let's move on to Preston. Vice Mayor Banks, do you have any comments or questions? You may want to call in with your cell phone if you have comments or questions because you're having technical difficulties. Is he still there?
Yeah, he's logged on twice, so I think he's trying.
Okay.
Preston, are you still on?
Okay, okay. Well, thank you very much, Chief. May we ask you to just hover around here for about 10 minutes, just in case Hasib and Preston can get through and if they have questions. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Fire and rescue.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, and everybody. So tonight I'll run through the fire department's presentation for the GB on the budget. So we'll go through a department overview, some principal challenges. Under the principal challenges, personnel costs, below that, so operation, and within the operation, we'll talk about the response data. And some stuff about the community focus, and then get down to the FY22 budget highlights. So moving to the first slide, which is the department organizational chart. This is currently how we're structured as of today. We currently have the fire chief, a deputy chief, a assistant chief, also / fire marshal. The assistant chief handles my operations. My admin. The deputy chief, which is Chief Jones, he handles the operations. Also on our day work, also works in ship work as well, with our EMS captain. And under the fire marshal's office is our secretary, admin support, Ms. Sanchez, and a part-time fire inspector, fire investigator. Once we drop down to the next level, you'll see there's battalion chiefs for all 3 shifts. Each shift has a battalion chief, a captain, and a staff of total of 8 people. So some principal challenges we encountered in the fire department. The first one, it seems like it's always here and never goes away. The high turnover rate. Our high turnover rate basically stays within our paramedic level. So in the last 5 years, we just can't seem to maintain our staff, which really caused us to end up with some very high overtime issues, because we're always faced with minimal staffing every day. Losing one person really hurts that. So, like I said, the increase in overtime costs comes from a lot of things this year. COVID being the big one. COVID really whacked us really good with this overtime cost. Our workers' comp injuries, there's been a lot of those. A lot of people went out on FMLA this year. There's been some vacation, some sick leave usage, all that just to try to maintain our staffing levels. So when we put people out at the city events, those cost overtime as well. So inefficient staffing levels, we're low in admin staffing. I had to take the fire marshal and make him admin chief, so now he's wearing 2 hats. We did give him a part-time inspector, part-time investigator. In the future, I hope we get him a deputy fire marshal so that someone can truly hit the streets every day, especially when new development getting ready to start here, so we keep up with all the businesses and all that. So that's going to be a need in the future. We really need to get to our 4-person staffing on our engines, which is a recommendation by NPA 1710, which truly impacts our ISO rating and safety of our residents and employees. So some CIP restrictions, vehicle replacement, the biggest one being a ladder truck. We know that's going to be a very, very expensive piece of equipment to repurchase. No way we get rid of it, but we did. Fire station maintenance and growth. We have people living there 24/7. We're starting to put together a plan of how to move some things around as we add staffing for the ladder truck and as for the future. And we're going to get very creative with that. So some departmental costs. This gives you a quick breakdown of how our entry-level people come in. The firefighter, he comes in at a base salary of $49,155. Lowest in the region. Good. And then as you look down through there, you can see the benefits and the health insurance and all that, how that works out. uniforms, medical physicals, and then the total projected cost of about $78,576. So for our firefighter paramedic, that base salary is at $53,392. They do get an ALS pay stipend for being a paramedic, which is $4,300. No, that's the lowest in the region. Manassas City's given up $10,000. Fairfax City's given up $15,000. Loudoun County's given up $15,000 just to get these people in the door. So all from 43 to 10 to 15 is kind of hard to recruit people in. So after all the uniforms, retirement, all that stuff, the base or the overall pay would be about $87,000 invested into a firefighter paramedic. So principal challenges with area salaries. When we did our study with the HR department, we looked at the city of Fairfax and the city of Manassas. We couldn't use Fairfax, we couldn't use Fall Church because they use Arlington County as their fire EMS. So trying to compare us to Arlington County, I don't think would work. So we looked at the two areas basically close to us, which was Fairfax City and Manassas City. First one jumps out, if you look at the very first one, Fairfax City, their assistant chief, that pay starts and ends higher than what our fire chief would do, our current pay structure. So you know how the rest of that's going to fall out for you if we compare the bottom and the middle together. So we're lagging pretty well behind. I believe the number we come up with HR was to get us to the area average for our salary based off of tenure and grade of our personnel was somewhere close to $500,000. We were pretty lagging behind that. I think city manager put that number up last week as well. So for operations, we run a very small group. We're staffed with 29 FTEs. We run a paramedic unit every day, which was the ambulance we bought last week. Again. For that staffing, you'll see 2 people every day. There'll be an EMT and a paramedic every day. Some days the staffing is 11, we'll put 2 paramedics there for the day. The other one is you'll see the fire suppression of the engine. A lot of people ask why does that engine always show up in the medical calls? Because that fire truck always has a paramedic on it. They can do the same thing that medic unit can do except for one thing. It can't take you to the hospital. But it can give you all the treatments you can get off that medic unit. So that's kind of our backup support piece to help us out until we can actually grow as a department. So minimal staffing there is 3. You get a captain, you get an operator every day, and you get a firefighter, paramedic. And again, NFPA 1710 says 4-person minimum on these fire trucks. If you look at the little link at the bottom, I didn't make it so we watch the video tonight because it's about 4 minutes long and Mr. Odell, we're going to require a lot of time tonight. So I'm gonna, if you want to copy that little link down, that's a pretty cool little video. It's 4 minutes long. It will truly show you what NFPA 1710 does for the fire department and for the community. And then we also have a battalion chief who is our instant commander on all incidents. That individual will go out, take command of the incident. Should we have an incident with our partners in PD, they would set up a joint command post. That vehicle has an area where PD can sit on one side of the vehicle and the fire can sit on the other side, and we work together as a team. So how are we going to work on our FTE count? So here's how our current operation works. Each shift has 8 personnel. Okay? They work 24/48 shift works. So they work 1 day, off 2 days. Each personnel is assigned a Kelly day, which that keeps us within the FSLA laws. So the Kelly day is a fixed day, so if someone comes to work and their Kelly day is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever, they're deemed off that day. Well, there's only 7 days in a week. We have 8 people. So 1 day of the week, we have to do a double Kelly day. So we try to pick the day that's the easiest for us to absorb because of call data showing that we're the least amount of calls happen per day. Plus, we have our EMS captain that still can fill in that day and gives that extra person back. So again, we require 6 people per day. Again, we would love to have that 7th person. So with any medical absence, unfilled vacancy, scheduled leave, unscheduled leave, we basically use overtime every day to cover that 6-person minimum to get service delivery at the door. So if I drop below 6, I'm starting to take units out of service, and then we start relying on Prince William or Manassas to take calls for our residents. So just some totals of the last 5 or 6 years here. In 2020, it went up a little bit. You look at 2021, we're at 1612 as of the beginning of the month. If that trend stays true, we're going to be somewhere around 2150, 2149. I'm here to send Mr. Falco the data. Our call volume has truly exploded in the last 3 months. We don't see the units anymore. They're not in the building at all. It's like, where'd you guys do? So maybe they don't like me anymore. I don't know. They're not ever there anymore. So, but no, their call volume is truly went up, which is good for them around. They love running calls. They do. So just kind of where the breakdown happens, as you see, the big blue box, that's where the unit calls are focused at, which is EMS. EMS is pretty much what the entire United States does. I think across the United States it's like a 68% deficit. I mean, 16% is the call volume is all EMS, which right on where we're at. Then there's the fire totals, then the other different hazards and service calls, lost calls, good intents, and special incidents. Now, the 1415 for EMS calls, the fire trucks run the majority of those calls as well. The 310 just means that's where there's been the prime units like fire in the city or in Manassas City or Prince William. Some quick community focused things that happens around the town every year. So getting to the FY22 budget proposal. So this is on the revenue side. So from FY21 amended to FY22 proposed, you'll see that the fire marshal permits go back up. Read the lead, total. We pull everybody out of inspections and out of businesses, just to keep everybody safe from the residents as well as our personnel. So we project that to go back up starting in FY22. The other one is EMS cost recovery. We're showing it to stay flat, but as you see, I put it in green because looking at the trend of where we've been at for the last 30 days, 3 months, our EMS calls are really starting to go back up. We're running a lot of EMS calls again. So I can truly believe that's going to go back up. So with all that, we're going to look at probably projecting about 396,100 in revenue for FY22. And if the EMS cost recovery goes up, that number should grow as well. So in the expenditure lines, you'll see some numbers moving around from FY21 to FY22. What we did with this FY22 budget is we started asking a lot of questions about why is this here and why is this here and why is this over here. What we were told was that's just the way it's always been. So when we started asking Mr. Taco and his staff, they were like, no, truly, that's that where truly needs to be. Like I'll give you a quick hit was EMS supplies. At EMS supplies, there used to be Robert's oxygen. Okay, you get medical grade oxygen delivered to the fire station 2 or 3 times a month. That's a contract that we have with Robert's oxygen. So when you said there's no EMS supply need, that's a service contract, an independent contract. So we took that and moved it to the contracts we're truly local this year. That's why some of the numbers are going up and down in the budget. So if you look at the budget, of course the salaries went up. That's Mr. Falco working on trying to get the salaries fixed based on the region needs. Overtime went up based off projections over the last couple of years. We kind of took the numbers to them, showing them where we're at and how much we go over every year. And so I think with the good data, we kind of got that. The holiday pay, of course, that went up with just the salary increase. The other big ones to jump out. So the ALS incentive pay, one thing we did for a retention issue was, it was only $4,000 we gave them for incentive pay. We took that away from being a stipend, so we tied that to their salary, their base salary, which would help their retirement in the long run. So those people are like, okay, I'd rather have the 43 tied to my pay, which helped my salary, retirement versus just a thing worked out like $53 a paycheck. So over on page number 2, just trying to look through some of the items that really increased a lot, most of them stayed flat. If you look at the maintenance service contracts, it went up from 81.7 to about 85,000. The increase there was pretty simple. Through CARES Act, we bought $236,000 worth of new EMS equipment that you guys approved. I appreciate that. But we also needed a way to service that equipment. So we raised the maintenance line up by $4,000 to take care of $236,000 we bought. So I think that's a fair trade-off. Travel education was another one that looked like it doubled. We've been asking for that number for many years, and we got it this year. And honestly, I think that number's still a little low, but we're trying to be really complacent, really waiting for the city to get back in a better financial shape before we move on. But that number is to help us with our new career development model plan. We put together a pretty good comprehensive plan together, outlining how to move from the bottom rank to the top rank, what you need to do with that, and how we're going to get you to the training and the proper training. Because we want to do a true succession plan, something we've kind of missed out on the boat with over the last many years. So we truly have a succession plan in mind. Anything else jumps out? Everything else looks pretty flat through the budget. There's actually a decrease from 21 to 22, a small decrease, which I think a lot of it had to do with the CARES Act stuff. It really is going to be pretty a slight increase, but looking like a decrease based off the CARES Act money. So just to kind of rehash some of the budget highlights. Revenue was down, like we talked about, for the fire marshal's office due to COVID. EMS cost recovery, it took a decline early, but it's really coming back up in Q3. So increased into the 22 budget, like I said, in various lines, you saw things move around, and that's all they did. They just moved from one place to the other. One line item was EMS supplies. It increased $5,000. It was just us taking the city AED-wide program, which we handle all the supplies for all the city AEDs, which are in City Hall, police department cars, Parks and Rec buildings. We had that in a separate line. We're like, why do we have two EMS lines? One 5,000 and one our regular EMS supplies. We just combined them together, and where that $5,000 increase came from. So it went from 18 to 23. So increase in the training and education line proposed in FY22, as we talked about, was for our career development plan. Our E911 consolidated dispatch cost goes up 7% every 2 years. We're reflecting our budget by asking for 3.5 every year, just to make sure we got those costs covered. And we talked about the service contracts with our $236,000 EMS budget. So one thing we did miss in the budget, and I talked to the city manager last week about this, is based off of if there's money left over after the roofs that are put on the PD in the schools, we're going to ask if there would be $30,000 left to do exterior painting at the fire station. I can tell you, being there the entire time, there's been no work done to the outside of that building other than putting the gutter back whenever the snow knocks it off. Our team comes up, puts the gutter back on, they fall off, there's snow, we put them back on. Keep them busy, but we'd like to put paint on the outside of the building before some serious damage starts happening, costs us more money. So if there's money left over in the year, we would like to make that request. Just a couple photos that happen every day around the building. And that's pretty much it. When you're at home, you may want to see it.
So talking with fire, I mean, the departments are excited about the plan that I laid out, but if you notice, fire continues to struggle with
Laszlo, can we hesitate for just a moment? Is that, Hasib, is that you? Vice Mayor Banks, have you been able to restore your sound? Councilmember Javed, is that you? To log in.
Muted.
Okay, we don't want to keep you if you have something else that you need to do, Chief Lugo and Major Reinhardt. It appears that they're not going to be able to log back in, so
Yeah, I just muted on the phone.
please do whatever you need to do.
I'll wait a little longer.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Go ahead, Laszlo, I'm sorry.
Okay. I hope I didn't mute this. Which one are we? Oh, no, we're good. Okay, great. Yeah, so we've been looking at what we can do to start helping out with retention with the fire department, and you saw the plan for the salary gap reductions begin in 23, but what we talked about was potentially reducing overtime and starting to put some of that money into salary line items starting in 22. If we did the math, if you reduce OT by 30,000 each of these next, every year, 22 through 26, and start this year with the offsetting 30,000 directly to salaries, then we'd be done with the fire department by FY25 instead of FY26. So we move that time a little bit up. Why that's important is because of the overtime. They just don't really have discretion not to man the fire engine and the ambulance without the minimal staffing. So that's why we see that they have the strongest pressure on overtime always. So it was something that we've just been talking about, and it was something I wanted to come back and propose to you all as you evaluate the budget as another consideration.
And thank you for bringing that up. And I think it's an excellent idea. And as I recall, when we talked about it in the past, we just have to be aware that raises may not cure the overtime problem because we're still below standards. Our salaries are still low.
Yeah, that's the goal. What this FY22 increase won't get us to the gap, but we close the gap by 25. That's
right.
Yeah.
And that's my point. We can't expect overtime to completely go away.
No, even when you get to your fully funded staff, you're just always going to have people out on sick leave or something that's going to drive overtime.
And I only bring it up so that we can be aware of that, to try to temper our expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. You never get rid of overtime.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Thank you, Chief. Do you have more to say, or can we move into questions now? Okay, thank you. Councilmember Amaya, do you have any questions?
No questions at this time.
Councilmember Moore.
Yes, Chief. First of all, thank you for your presentation. I had one question on overtime. Well, first I'll get to this question here. The shifting of 30,000 from the overtime budget to the personnel line doesn't get us any new firefighters. This is just something we're doing to close the gap.
Keep the current firefighters.
So we're giving increases? Is that what these are pay increases?
30,000 would go to those salary increases.
And this would happen in 22?
It would start in 22. So if you notice, my plan started in 23.
Yeah, I remember.
Their department had the biggest
Gap?
Yeah, biggest gap and the biggest dollar value. I believe it's $105,000 each year starting in 22.
Yes.
If we add this 30,000 to that, we'd be done by 25 instead of 26. So, but it would just go into pay. It would not add staffing. To add staffing, though, I think we've already submitted or we're working on a grant with Birch and McIntyre for additional EMS employees, 100% paid by the federal government. To add additional, that will help.
If that comes through, yeah, that'd be great.
That comes through, absolutely. So that's.
So the 100,000 that we budgeted for overtime, which was a huge jump from this 40,000 that was part of the amended budget to 100,000. You're saying of that 100,000, you're gonna reduce it to 70?
Correct.
And take 38,000. So when you look at the cost of what a firefighter EMT, and I appreciate the information that's provided us here, for 78,000, we could hire a new person. Wouldn't that reduce our overtime if we hired a new person for 78,000?
I think that's what I brought up that point earlier.
She did. I'm kind of rephrasing the question. No, I'm not saying we totally eliminate. You can't totally reduce overtime to zero, But you could reduce it, my question is, can you reduce it significantly if you brought in an extra person?
So you're saying keep it at, or reduce from 100,000 down to 22,000,
Well,
and then invest that 78,000 into a salary.
The 100,000 that's currently budgeted for this year, not taking into consideration your 30,000 shift,
Yeah.
that would give people pay raises, but take that 70,000 and hire a new firefighter EMT, and then there would still be, no, you wouldn't zero it out, because you'd only need 78,000 to hire someone.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So your overtime budget would now be 22,000.
Or, yeah, 20 to 30,000, which is what it's currently budgeted at 40.
Okay, so you're saying, so reduce it down to $22,000.
With an extra person.
Correct, but that's what I'm trying to get. So overtime line item would go from 100,000 down to 22,000.
Yes.
And then the amount that you're taking out there, you would shift to the salary line item, not for the pay raise, but for an additional staff person.
We'd have additional firefighter in our community.
Yeah.
Responding to our calls.
Yeah, it's an option.
I don't think it.
How would that help for retention, though?
It doesn't. That's
It doesn't.
the issue.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
But we still have a retention plan that starts in 23.
Correct.
We still have a plan to do retention. It keeps it on plan as opposed to moving it forward.
The goal with why we want to start with the pay
Yes.
before the position is because it's so hard when you lose someone. We've already invested so much
Sure,
time and
sure,
effort
sure.
into
Training.
Who's ready to do the job. And because again, we're aggressively pursuing the grant option to get the additional positions funded by the federal
And what kind of timing do we have? When do we know we've applied and we'll have
We applied for the grant back
information?
in February.
Okay.
Merchant Manpower, we asked for 6 because it was totally funded for the first 3 years.
Fantastic.
Funded.
Six positions.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
If that comes through,
That's huge.
we won't have to look at taking any of that salary cost on until FY '25.
At that point, that's what we have.
Yeah, we have to absorb those positions.
And that's where we have 3, so we don't have to keep all 6. But
Right.
you're still gonna lose people, right? Like even if.
Attrition, you still have attrition, right.
Yeah, even if you get to 100% gap eliminated, people still change jobs, so, but we have in the budget by the time that grant money runs out, then we cover those 3, which is always the goal, was to have 3.
And will we know the decision on the grant before we make our budget decision, before we as a board votes in June?
We're working off the federal government's fiscal year, which is in October.
Yes, that's right.
So they'll probably let us know by October. I think last year, most awards started coming out around August, September, right towards the early October, so they wait to the very last minute. for the
Yeah, sure,
awards.
sure.
And from that point, once you're awarded the grant, you have 180 days to make the hiring.
Oh,
So
that's good.
Push that off 6 months. So if you would, they said, hey, September, should we give it to you? We push it off as close to FY '23 as possible. Now that carries us almost to FY '26 when we pick up the bill.
Okay.
So we should really have the downtime.
That's a good thing. Okay, thank you, Chief.
Do you have a follow-up?
I don't, thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Mensing?
I was just wondering, could you elaborate on the fire station maintenance? Like, what is your vision for that?
The maintenance,
Yeah.
my goal right now is to try to work on the retaining on the exterior first.
Oh, okay.
Because there's just been no maintenance on the outside right now.
Okay.
I mean, we just haven't had the money, so we kind of just let it go.
Got it. Okay.
But we can start seeing that if you come look at it, it's basically primer paint that was never painted.
Unmuted.
So we're looking to do that. And then of course in the CIP, there's the repair and the replacement of those big bay doors.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Failing them was on a rapid pace.
Mm-hmm.
They break every weekend, and then break them out and pay them double, come back up, fix them. They go break during the week. So, and then in the interior, just kind of do some remodels of the kitchen and stuff like that. And the area where the people use on a daily basis. To the CARES money, we were able to renovate and upgrade the reserve EOC, which is also our / training room. So that was a big help.
That's nice.
Okay. Thanks.
Follow-up?
Nope.
No?
Thank
Okay.
you.
Councilmember Hampton? Yep.
Hello, Chief. I need to put my glasses on to read my. So the first question is very similar to what I asked the police department about trends that'll be coming, or that you think might be occurring in the upcoming fiscal year, and that may potentially impact the finances. Like you may need some more money, or you may have to shift things around. Or there's anything such like that that's looming?
Just kind of listening to the national level, what's going on, I don't see COVID going away from us anytime soon. So I think that's one thing we gotta keep our eyes peeled on, COVID, stay prepared for COVID as it keeps growing. Talking to the OMDs and seeing the report that came up from Dr. Hanser today, knowing the scare of Ebola starting to come back to us.
Really?
Ebola.
Knowing that we have Dulles Airport in our backyard, which is one of the screening centers where they fly people into Dulles Airport. The Northern Virginia region, we travel. We travel a lot, so knowing that those two things are in our backyard and probably within our community, hopefully we don't have to see the Ebola. That was one thing our OMD was scared about, is that Ebola decides to merge with COVID, what's going to happen.
Oh my.
So let's just hope that's just speculation. We don't want to see that happen here because we're nowhere. And that would be a big uptake for somebody.
Wow.
So that's on the national level. On the state, there's always issues with the way the fire inspections are done. They're always changing the code. Chief Gilmer can probably speak this more than I can. I know with our new development coming, they just rolled out some new updates for 2018. They seem to be behind 3 to 5 years every time they put out updates. Locally, with all the work I have Chief Gilmer doing with Fire Marshal and with the budget side, he basically takes the budget and runs with it. So he kind of takes the oversight and helps me a lot, so I really appreciate the help. But I would like to see us figure out a way to get him some support in there. That's a trend I think that's going to have to help him out with all the downtown development. There's going to need someone to do all those business inspections in the future. And part of another trend is getting the ladder truck back. I mean, the double stacked townhomes that we're getting ready behind City Hall here, they're held correctly 40 foot to the roof, or to the face roof, or the double stacked townhomes. They're 45 foot tall, right? Yeah. So that's not something you want to tackle with the ground ladder. You probably need a ladder truck for that area. So there's a trend that's coming through the.
That already exists. We already have those.
Yeah, no, you're correct. We have a big need for it with the school, everything we have.
And then you mentioned that you're starting to see an uptick in calls. Is there a specific reason that's driving that other than COVID, or is it COVID related still?
The COVID cases, I don't think they're upticking. I think they stay kind of flat for us. Most people with COVID, they either drive themselves to the hospital or they just waited at home. We're not sure where the uptick's at. I mean, it's not medical related, it's not injury related. We're just seeing uptick in calls. I mean,
Does it have anything to do with most accidents happening around the home and people are home? Is that?
it's a good possibility. One driving force could be is that we're currently testing this, what's called ABL closest unit dispatch with Princeton County, Manassas. So areas we did not run in the past, all the stuff along Manassas Drive, we're starting to pick up that call volume over there. We're now running over to Osborne Park High School, which we never did before. The Birmingham Nursing Home right there on 28, we're running there a little more often now. So we are running a lot more calls, but it's hard to say what the call type is. Once we truly sit and break them up, I could break them up, give you a list of every call type if you like.
I don't know, Madam Mayor, do you think that's something that would be good to see?
I'm sorry, could you please say?
Break down the call, like lump the categories of calls that we're getting. You think that would be good for the citizens to see?
I think it would be, yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay.
Those are all my questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Javed, are you with us?
I muted everybody, so you may have to unmute.
You might have to unmute. Councilmember Javed? Vice Mayor Banks, can you unmute? Are you there? Vice Mayor Banks, trying to give them enough time to unmute. Okay, I don't think that they're with us. Okay.
No, that's us.
Okay.
I didn't realize it.
Can I ask another follow-up?
Oh, you have a follow-up?
I do.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Chief Soper, could you help me understand the purchase of the ladder truck? Is that budgeted and going to occur in FY22? I'm a little confused by the documents I've been looking at.
So we put the ladder truck into CIP.
Yes.
FY24.
Oh, 9 to 24.
Trying to wait until the debt ceiling comes way down.
Okay.
Starting to get a little bit of revenue in from downtown or house back here. And we also did we're gonna write what's called an AFG, Assistance Firefighter Grant from FEMA.
Good.
To help us assist with that cost. We actually wrote one this year for the fire engine that's in FY23. So we're trying to write as many grants as possible.
No, that's good. That's good. Can you just remind me what the cost was for the ladder? I know they're expensive.
So what we're getting from our partners next door who just bought one in the city of Manassas.
Yes.
They just bought one, a brand new one.
Oh, nice.
For the truck alone, they paid 1.5 million. Now,
That's just for the truck. You need all the little things you have to hook onto it and
you're probably
stuff.
looking somewhere roughly 1.8 with time yearly together.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank
The
you.
budget model assumes that we get grant money for it, so we don't get grant money for it. But I suppose we could shift other things from the budget, but we're assuming we're gonna win some grants to help us out.
Okay.
I have a
You know,
question.
the more I think of, I'm sorry, were you going to say something else?
I think, yes.
I just
Oh,
want to
yes,
ask.
go
yeah.
ahead.
So on orientation, I think, I might be mistaken, but you had a problem with the AC unit and the heating unit. Was that fixed or is that still being
Through our CARES
budgeted?
Act funding, we were able to order a system, which is coming in to be replaced. Should be this week or next week, so that's going to be addressed through CARES Act funding.
Nice, okay, good, thank you.
And just to clarify, so what we did is we modernized the HVAC system with the UV system to kill germs. So it was an effort to keep our employees healthy.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any last minute questions or comments or, okay. You know, the more I think about it, the more I like the idea of shifting the 30,000 because even though it doesn't get us another staffer, it puts people first. It helps them with their salary. It's a salary increase. So, yeah, thank you so much, Chief. We appreciate the presentation. Okay, it appears that Councilmember Javed and Vice Mayor Banks are not with us.
Preston's name here.
What?
Yeah, there
Can you hear me?
There we go.
Preston, are you with us?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, not clearly, but we can hear you. Preston, I want to ask you if you have any questions for Chief Lugo on the police presentation.
No, if I have any, I'll email them.
Okay, thank you, Preston. Do you have anything for Chief Soper?
I'll do the same.
Okay, thank you, Preston.
Glad
Okay,
you're able to hear me.
next is Community Development Budget Presentation.
All right. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council, citizens and staff, Councilman Odell, I'm the Director of Community Development. Oh, boy. Get to the first page and there's an error. That's a bad sign. We're actually here tonight to talk about the FY22 budget, but we probably will talk about the FY21 budget too, so I guess it's not a total lot. Layout of tonight's presentation. First, we're going to start with a review of our department structure and go over some of the key goals for the various divisions. Then we're going to review the scope of services for those divisions and go over fund budget reviews and any specific highlights or comments, and then do a very brief overview of the departmental goals. First, we'll start with the org structure. Who are we? In our org chart, which includes vacancies and frozen positions and proposed positions, there's 35 FTE total. Currently, there are 4 FTEs frozen and proposed to remain frozen for FY22. We were funded for 29.5 FTEs in FY21.
And we're looking to fund an additional 1.5 FTEs for FY22, which would bring our total operating to 31 FTEs in FY22. Looking at the chart, you can see that we were previously broken up into 4 distinct divisions: engineering services, which is what everyone refers to as public works, very commonly called public works, so we kind of stick with that trend. But there you have your water and sewer division, you have your streets division, your stormwater division, site and stormwater. Then we have the development services division, which handles building, planning, zoning, and code enforcement. And then we have a facilities division and a fleet maintenance division. And new proposed for FY22 is actually a separate sort of division with a transportation program manager, someone that's not necessarily associated with day-to-day operations, streets maintenance, but capital issues and long-term planning. This is a chart that I think Lazo referenced the other night in his budget presentation. It takes a look, the green bars are our actual staffing levels. And this chart goes all the way back to 2007, the year after I started at the city. And it takes a look at the number of staff that were allocated to the current functions of the department. So I used old budget models and went through, and back then we were at 34 FTEs, and our population was around 12,000. That's what that black line represents, is the actual population. From 2008 through 2011, during the Great Recession, we actually had a population boom. The city had built some new development, and for other various reasons, we had an immense population spike during the Great Recession. But Public Works especially experienced a lot of riffing during the Great Recession. Altogether, you see how our FTEs dropped off from the Great Recession, and then even in 2016, we lost another FTE. So at one point in time, where we were operating with 2.9 FTEs per 1,000 citizens in 2007, we wound up today, even with the minor staffing decompression we've had, at 1.8 FTE per 1,000. And to get back to where we were in 2007 at 2.95 FTE per 1,000, we'd have to have 50 employees. So that's just a sort of analysis of what our population's done compared to our FTEs for the same services. Brief department scope overview. The Public Works Division, which is headed by the Engineering Services Manager, looks like this, broken out from the rest of the org chart. Really encompasses water, sewer, streets, site and storm, and then the new backflow prevention specialist. We do all the water utility infrastructure management, sewer utility infrastructure management, stormwater utility infrastructure management, streets and public right-of-way maintenance, and site development inspections. And this one is the shortest one on the list maybe, but it's also the most complicated. Stormwater permit management, you're talking about your municipally separate storm system, your MS4 permit, as well as your entire VSMP, your Virginia Stormwater Management Program. It's a very complicated function that got a lot more complicated in 2014 with a whole new set of regulations. So it's a short little thing at the end, but it's a lot. Streets, increase. Our key goals in the streets division is to increase pavement patch and repair. I think this picture here is what everyone around the city would like to see. We sometimes have staffing challenges with the number of crew we have. You can see a lot of vehicles out here, a lot of coned off, shut down roadways. It takes more than just the streets division to do an operation like this. So when you do operations like this, you're actually pulling from your water sewer crew to accomplish things like this. But our major goal is to actually increase our pavement patch and repair work citywide. Implement sign installation plan for parking modifications. We will be working in conjunction with a contractor at some point in time, likely we have our own parking sign replacement to get away from the painted curb, and any parking modifications that we make in a city we have to focus crew on making sure that's a coordinated effort, even if it is with a contractor or something like that. We have to coordinate signal improvements. This has become a real issue. We have several traffic signals in the city that have been replaced within the past 5 to 6 years. However, we also have some now aging signals that have some major infrastructure challenges. They have equipment in them that is no longer serviceable. Replacement parts are not even available on the market. So we have a series of capital improvements lined up to address these signal improvements. But operationally, we're talking about shutting down intersections, directing traffic, and devoting crew to coordinating these improvements. One of the big things that we've been working on throughout FY21 is the implementation of our new tracking software. We were using a work order system and tracking software that was more designed towards fleet maintenance, wasn't necessarily designed for our public works operations. We have spent the substantial portion of FY21 getting that implemented, and we will spend probably the early part of FY22 learning how to perfect and refine that tool. And the big thing that is on my mind, and you'll see this on every key goal slide here for the public works crew, this is really succession planning. I could go back to the org chart and point out some key positions, but we have an entire batch of guys who are all going to retire at the same time. Some of them have been here for well over 30 years, some of them are right at 30 years, but basically it was caused by the fact that when a lot of these guys came on, they weren't under VRS. So the guys with over 30 years of service weren't in the VRS program at the time. So it just so happens that the guys with well over 30 years align with the guys that are just at 30 years for the retirement date. So we're expecting to lose 5 to 6 key individuals at the same time. That creates a big operational issue for us. So succession planning is very important. Recruitment and retention, of course, we need to recruit some new talent because we're going to have to wind up replacing that experience. We have to retain the experience we have. We have a small group of guys that have been here for 12 to 15 years and a small group of guys that have been here for around 5. It's very important that we keep those guys if we're going to lose those 30-year veterans. And then developing SOPs, that's basically about training. When you recruit, can you successfully train? If you have SOPs, yes, you can successfully train. So this last comment, you'll see it on all these slides, is really about succession planning.
While we're still on streets, could you articulate, I know we've tried to get the info out to the public, but can you articulate again why we're transitioning from painted curbing to signage? We often have questions about that. It pops up on Facebook or whatever.
Yeah, there is more than one reason, but in the long run, signs last longer. Painting curb has to be done on a very regular basis. Once it's more than 3 to 5 years old, it doesn't even show up. It's marred up, it's chipped up, and it's not visible to the public. Signs have a much longer lifespan, so they stay visible. Sometimes even 15 to 20 years, they can remain highly visible. But the other major piece of having to paint curb on a regular basis is we're no longer an empty city, where the curbs are there and exposed all day long every day. We have to first go out and put out no parking signs and clear everyone off a section of curb so that we can then go paint that curb. Because after spray doesn't just go where you're spraying it. We have to get everybody out of the way of our spraying operation, or else we have people filing insurance claims because we got after spray on their vehicle. So it's a little inconvenient operationally to send crew out one day to mark an area, warning, we'll be painting nearby, don't park here. And then they go out and there's cars nearby and they don't want to start the operation until they knock on doors and clear people. Painting is no longer something that we just send around some summertime help in the back of a pickup truck with a can of paint and a brush. It's become a very complicated operation, whereas if you just install a sign one time, you're probably not going back and replacing it for a substantial amount of time unless somebody strikes it with a vehicle.
Thank you, Calvin. I thought that was worthwhile reviewing that again. Thank you.
Other critical points too. If the paint is faded,
Do you want to come to the microphone so the folks at home can hear you?
So if the paint is faded, then our police will struggle sometimes if someone takes their ticket to court to prove that they can say, well, I didn't see, the paint wasn't clearly marked. And the judge can actually throw that out. The sign is quite evident, and you have more flexibility. You can actually delineate what you want to say on the sign versus just using paint doesn't necessarily do that. So like overnight commercial parking prohibitions and things like that.
Right. Thanks, Lasso. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's something that's been reiterated even through your ADA regulations. It's no longer on a national level compliant just to paint a handicap accessible space. You must have the sign. It's more highly visible. It's not likely to be, it's visible even when it's raining and there's a glare coming off the pavement. The sign is the new standard for marking places where you're reserving or restricting parking. On the water sewer key goals, continued improvement in leak detection and unaccounted for water. We're going to get into this a little bit more, but this is very important for so many reasons. Water loss and capacity issues. Valve replacements. We had some major concerns about Blooms Crossing, and we still have a major ongoing project. The good news is that in our most recent survey of the valves installed in Blooms, it reduced our workload by about 40%. We assumed that all of the valves that were installed in Blooms Crossing would have the same bolts, be of the same manufacturer. So far in our survey, looks like only about 60% of the valves out there would be targeted for bolt replacement. So that really reduces the scope of this project, and we've had great success in just replacing the bolts. We have yet to have to replace an entire valve in our operations. The guys came up with a neat little device that attaches to the backhoe that keeps the valve body together while we safely remove and replace one bolt at a time. So our costs have dropped substantially. But again, an operation like this where we're closing down traffic and excavating a street takes more guys that are actually in the water and sewer division, so we have to pull streets guys into the operation. So these days are whole crew days. Lateral investigations for I&I reduction. We are now beyond that comfortable point where we just tell a contractor, hey, we need you to line 6,000 feet of sanitary sewer. We don't have that option anymore. We have pretty much lined close to 96% of the aging sewer in the West End. And now we're at that point where our next step.
I don't think we have any sound.
Laszlo's back there fixing it.
You might want to hesitate until he comes back out.
So they can still hear us on YouTube.
Oh, they can?
Yeah, so
okay.
they can, but
okay.
Can you see if Preston and the secret, can you test it? Can you say
Yeah, I can hear you. Testing.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Thank you, Calvin, sorry.
Okay, so as I was saying, when you're trying to prevent I&I, your first step is always to reline your aging sewer mains. But we have accomplished, for the most part, that goal. The next steps in I&I reduction are far more complicated. We have pushed all of our I&I upstream into the laterals. There's perhaps some call for manhole relining and the connections to the mains and the manholes. But this next phase of investigation is going to be far more staff intensive. The guys going out with the push camera, inspecting private laterals. We own a portion that's in the street. It directly connects to the residence portion that runs through the yard. And we have to inspect the condition of both and decide what is cost-effective strategy here, how bad are our actual I&Is through the laterals, probably quite substantial, and what is the ultimate plan to fix them, and can we actually enter into some sort of agreement with the public to make sure that we're getting as many private laterals replaced as possible. But the next phase of I&I reduction does get far more staff intensive and complicated. Pump station improvement planning. I think I had an opportunity to talk to all the new council members about that this year when we visited the pump stations. We have already started several years ago preliminary planning for some of the major needs at our sewer lift stations. And now it's time to start focusing on the real detailed plans and getting those improvements constructed. Water modeling and connection mapping. This has been a goal of our engineering services manager for a long time. And I had to laugh when I had a conversation with my consultant at Bowman the other day who said, you know, you guys really need a water model. Yes, we do. Absolutely. We have not completely remodeled our system since the major service authority pump station improvements, and since we got rid of the intermediate zone that was a part of that improvement. It is time to model our split system once, you know, with it in its current condition. Complete implementation of tracking software to improve reporting and planning. That's the same comment that you're going to see on every division. We have to get this new software fully implemented and perfect our operations so that we can provide better reporting, better tracking of our activities. And again, this one's going to be on every slide. This is that succession planning comment. Stormwater. We improved the SMP program. Sounds very generic, but it's a very specific problem for the city of Manassas Park. I don't like to use the term babysat, but essentially we are being babysat by DEQ. It is causing a lot of headaches for the guys in the stormwater division because they'll go out and inspect the site, and then DEQ will come out and inspect the site. We might have only had 2 or 3 violations. They'll put together a page and a half, and we have to butt heads on what's really a violation. You know, their standards are not the same as our standards from time to time, and we are essentially being asked to do what their inspector says, but then take over all the paperwork and all the reporting to the developer. So as much as we've tried to build a VSMP program since 2014, we still only have 2 gentlemen allocated to that cause, and we have DEQ running around behind us telling us we're not doing it quite right. So we're going to have to seriously look at major improvements, major revamping of how we do things with the guidance and help of DEQ to make sure that they are satisfied. Escalating enforcement actions ties right back into that VSMP program comment. Probably the most common thing we hear when DEQ asks us, you know, well, what happens after you issue a violation notice or after you issue a corrective order? Well, we go back out and we check on it. And what if they haven't fixed it? Well, we issue them a violation notice. Well, why aren't you fining them? Well, we just really don't have a fine system in place, and that's true with code enforcement across the board in the city of Manassas Park. It's something that we're working at. But DEQ really wants us to start slapping fines on developers and builders who aren't following the rules. They call it escalating enforcement actions, and they comment about it all the time. Continue to raise the bar on site inspection, quality, and documentation. We have really raised the bar for Manassas Park since 2016. We had no site inspections division in 2016 and prior. Now we do have 2 very qualified gentlemen who are constantly out on these sites. They happen to be out there for stormwater and E&S reasons, but they're also out there watching out for our interests in conducting the water and sewer inspections, the street and sidewalk inspections. But there's always room for improvement. And since we take a lot of these things over when the developer's done installing them, we need to make sure that they're absolutely perfect so that we're not caught in a maintenance situation due to somebody else's poor installation practices. Pond maintenance and improvements. I've spoken about this, I think, with everybody on the body. We have too many ponds for a city of our size that we're responsible for. We have gotten pretty spectacular in the past couple years with improving our methodology for attacking the overgrown ponds especially, and increasing our mowing schedule. But there's always room for improvement. We really need to start focusing on the actual improvements, mucking out those ponds, restoring them to their proposed condition. So that is a major goal for us, is to not just be maintaining, but also start improving. Capital improvements for the Connor Center. This is all about the degrading galvanized pipe that was so prevalent throughout the Connor Center. We've had a couple sinkholes develop on people's business properties down there. So that's something that we really need to start shifting our resources, our staff resources, towards, not contracting out so many projects but actually letting the guys go in and take out and replace what they can. Complete implementation of the tracking software. I told you, I warned you, it'd be on every slide. Because it's every division, they're all on the same goal of improving their reporting and tracking. And again, succession planning. Development Services Division. This is what that looks like broken out. It doesn't show well in the entire work chart. This is very much the actual structure and how it looks. Again, we're asking for a part-time code enforcement inspector in FY22, and we have been recruiting and interviewing for the building official position. We still have that building inspector vacancy. The building official is intended to help make up some of that workload that we're not able to do with a single inspector that we were able to do with two. Planning and zoning is a basic operation function of Michelle Berry, the Development Services Manager. Development Plan Management, this is the least probably considered part of Michelle's responsibilities, but it is probably the one that causes her the most headache. She is responsible for accepting a site development plan, sending it out to all the experts and departments, and then taking everyone's comments, compiling them, and in the end, she's responsible for making recommendation for site plan approval. It's an incredibly intensive job, and it's been a heck of a year this year. Virginia Uniform Statewide Building Code Compliance. I have been serving as the building official for the city of Manassas Park, I think since 2013. But that function will be taken over when the building official is hired. That the building official is the person for this jurisdiction who is in charge of USBC enforcement. Property code enforcement. This is not just your code enforcement inspector. It's also falls under your building official for property maintenance code issues from time to time, and zoning code issues, sometimes too complicated for the code enforcement inspector to handle, so they go right up the chain to Nikki as the zoning administrator. Development Services key goals. We manage a substantial workload. This slide actually kind of amuses me because this was kind of like doom and gloom last year. But things are much different for our department's outlook this year. We were in maintenance mode last year, and we've been saying that for many years. But with all the new improved development, now our major goal is just to not sacrifice quality while we're managing all this new work that also comes with new revenue. That's the good side, but it is a tremendous amount of work that we're facing. So we're just trying to manage the substantial workload without sacrificing service, a level of enforcement, or record keeping. We, again, a different piece of software, but a new implementation software that started this year and will go on probably through August of FY22, and then we'll probably spend several months refining that and then, getting good at it. Implement plan to digitize archives. This is a very big issue for us. I don't know how many people know, but we have an entire archive room that is filled back here in not the Bay Area, but the back of City Hall. We took over the old social services storage closet. That's now full. And this office up here is so crammed full of filing cabinets. The only way that we're going to be able to manage moving successfully and not losing a bunch of access to documentation without a gigantic storage room is to digitize everything that we're going to need immediate access to, and then putting archive plans really off to the side somewhere in a separate storage facility where we never really have to get to them. But if they're digitized, the information is there for us to have. So we have a scanner. We are having regular meetings about how to make this come off in time for the City Hall move. So that's a big focus of this Development Services Division. This is very important to everyone, improving the code enforcement presence and results in the community. We're asking for a part-time inspector. I could probably argue we could use 2 to 3 full-time inspectors to really give people the presence in the community they're looking for. I saw it personally, when we had 2 full-time and 2 part-time inspectors, the presence was greater. You always had multiple inspectors running around and everybody saw them. And all of a sudden, after a year or so, things really start getting cleaned up because people know you're there. When one inspector is trying to police the entire city, it's not much presence that people kind of get lazy and things start falling apart. Fleet division, this is your fleet supervisor. We've had a mechanic position. This was really focused on diesel mechanic, big diesel mechanic. We had it filled for a short period of time, and that position's been frozen ever since. And then our crew worker 3 has always been there in the shop. It's not safe to run a shop with just one person ever, so we always have 2 people in the garage. And that is the layout of the small fleet division. Public safety maintenance, vehicle maintenance, that is police vehicles, fire vehicles, arguably snowplow vehicles as well. General service vehicle maintenance, that's pretty much hitting your white fleet. We'll talk about that a little bit with the enterprise fleet program. And equipment maintenance, a whole lot of equipment. Public Works has a lot of equipment. Parks and Rec has, ever-growing list of equipment. I hope that this picture goes away next year. Been in this presentation for a long time. I had to keep it in there for 1 more year though, until there's a whole bunch of new white fleet pictures. But that is our City Hall fleet in all its glory. Coordinated onboarding of the new enterprise fleet program. That's going to be a major goal. Tommy's been working closely with Chris Himes and all the various department heads. Working with vendors to increase the speed of fire apparatus repair. That's been a nagging issue for several years. We send apparatus out to get repaired. We expect it back in a week or 2. A month later, we're still fighting to get it back. That's not good to have apparatus out in service. Complete implementation of tracking software. Same comment across the board. Tommy probably didn't want to switch from Manager Plus. It was a fleet-oriented tracking program that he was used to, but we also had a goal of consolidating everybody into one program. So he got kicked out of his program and has to join the new program. Facilities division. Kenny Woodson is your facilities manager. I think we have some very good news. We have a signed offer letter on the Porter vacancy as of today. And then the part-time janitor position under that. They're responsible for the maintenance of city buildings and grounds. Contractual services management. Contractual services are pretty significant for this division. You've got lots of things that we just aren't qualified to do. Elevator inspections, fire alarm system inspections, even your fire extinguisher inspections. There's a lot of things PM of HVAC equipment. Yes, we could probably staff someone equivalent to a porter that just focused on PM, but right now, with the aging buildings, we're handling so many calls that we wouldn't have time to go out and do all the PM ourselves on all the HVAC equipment, replace all the filters, belts, and things of that nature. So we're using contract services to do that. Long-term goal, maybe it's cost-effective to hire someone to do PM, but we just can't do it right now. Janitorial lighting and supply management. Again, that was a big reason that we brought on a porter instead of another janitor, someone that could actually do inventory and keep track of supplies. Engineering, energy conservation planning. I'm constantly amazed. Kenny's always, he's keeping up with solar vendors. He's very interested in switching out all the lights to LED. It's sort of just a thing that he doesn't like changing out ballasts. He wants to go LED. So he's pretty much got plans for all the buildings, parking lots to switch everything to LED. And he's really on board with solar arrays if we can make them cost effective. But Kenny's very energy focused. And capital improvement planning. Again, we have aging infrastructure and that the assets, the large assets are very expensive. Your rooftop units at your PD are $70,000 to $80,000 a piece. So those are capital improvements. Those aren't just something that goes out and you say, oh man, we need another one. You gotta think long-term plan to replace equipment like that. Facilities key goals, continued diligence on building cleaning and infection control measures related to COVID-19. I know we feel like we're all turning a corner, but we still have to do our due diligence and focus on keeping our facilities clean, prevent further infection. Develop cost-effective interim solutions to capital needs. That's been a major goal, for Kenny since he came on. We're not going to get new facilities right away. We know we're carrying City Hall for another year. We don't know when we'll be out of the Public Works building. So we need cost-effective interim solutions till we get new facilities and new capital. Utilizing new software for efficient request, response, and tracking. Kenny also is in the new software, so same comment across the board. And again, looking at system audits, energy efficiency audits, and building audits to plan life cycle based planning of capital investments. Building PM schedules for all capital equipment. This is something that I've never seen at the city. We onboarded a lot of new buildings, PD, fire, community center. Jay Swisher has great PMs probably established by his building contractor. We didn't have a building and grounds department to take them on, so he's had to internalize that. The PD, whether or not their contractor laid out PM schedules for them, by the time the PD was on board and operational, we were downsizing Public Works and there was no more buildings and ground staff. So Kenny has had to go back and retroactively build PM schedules, and he's still in the process for all of that. Transportation Planning Division, this is the one that we're proposing for FY22. Transportation is the largest portion of our capital budget. So we're really looking for someone for transportation planning, capital program management, project management. Currently, this is a job that Alan and I sort of split. Who draws the short straw? Who has to be the project manager today? Street condition assessment and pavement reconditioning coordination. So currently, Alan works with the street supervisor to sort of do a windshield survey. This would be a long-term focus of the actual transportation planning, a transportation program manager to then do the windshield survey, make sure that we're staying on target with our repaving funding to meet a schedule that's not just keeping up, but hopefully proper maintenance and actually accelerating the improvements that the citizens can see. Maximize transportation grant potential. That's a key goal. We've always gotten revenue sharing money when we asked for it. Eventually, depends on the state of the state budget. We rarely, with the downfall of the urban program, we rarely get anything. Euclid Avenue was the last urban money that was really a draw, was available that the city could take advantage of. Everything's been revenue sharing since, or coming out of our MBTA fund. So I don't feel like we're maximizing our transportation grant potential. There's got to be money out there. You just have to be hunting and pecking for it constantly. Improve transportation planning and long-term goals. Improve project delivery and budgeting. Again, that's associated with project management. And strategic planning for pavement evaluation and resurfacing operations. Urban maintenance funds, expenditure planning, tracking, and reporting. This is, every year, I don't think anybody knows, but we turn in a Weldon Cooper survey. And we have to prove that we spent all the money on streets maintenance that VDOT gave us for streets maintenance. Sounds easy, but we're talking $750,000. It's a very difficult task. And I did it for several years. Laura, my operations manager, started helping me with it. And we're getting pretty good at the system we have, but we always spend the last couple weeks before the surveys due scrambling to get it together. And then the auditors always, question you about it, and you have to go back and spend more time going over it with the auditors. So a major goal of this transportation program manager would be to track this and work with the auditors to make sure that they love our style of reporting as much as possible. This is our general fund revenues summary sheet going back, or summary chart going back to FY16. I like to show this because that green line is total revenues for community development general fund. The black dark blue line is that VDOT money. That's $715,000 to $755,000. It doesn't change much. You can see it's relatively flat. But what's amusing is that the total revenues curve and the building permit revenues curve look so similar. There's a reason why new housing starts are such an indicator for economic development and success, telling you which way your economy's going. And if you'll notice, at FY16, building permit revenues were on a downfall, and they've remained relatively flat from 18 through 21, and now all of a sudden, building permit revenues are supposed to take off, which look what that does to the total revenues for our department. And it also is pulling up those all other revenues, which are primarily planning and zoning revenues, because those come up a little bit before you actually start issuing building permits. Comments, VDOT maintenance funds have represented over 80% of our revenue stream since 2017. However, we have all sorts of new development in the pipeline. So building permits are anticipated to represent 30 to 35% of this revenue for the next 2 years. Permitted revenues will remain elevated beyond normal anticipation through 2025. And site development permit revenues will come in significant waves from time to time as site development permits are approved based on the rezonings that we've done. And commercial tenant interest could drive revenues even higher. Right now, there's a lot of empty spaces. There's going to be some new buildings that are going to be built as shells. As the commercial interest peaks, tenant build-out money comes in, and those permits are substantially greater than residential permits like we'd see on a normal basis. So as commercial interest picks up, even revenue for building permits that we're not currently anticipating would pick up. General fund expenditures. This is a look back since 16 at our total general fund picture. From 17 and 18, I call this unsustainable. And everybody says, well, how do you know it's unsustainable? You survived. Well, yeah, but in 17, we didn't meet our goals for street expenditures. Fortunately, VDOT's willing to look back a year and forward a year. And if you fall a little behind in your reporting 1 year, they'll give you a break and see if you can make it up next year. So we were able to do that, so we didn't get in any trouble. But how many times do you want to fail to report your urban spending? The only reason that we really made it is because in 16 there was Winter Storm Jonas. 17 and 18 we didn't have any snow. One recorded event, one measurable recorded event over 2 winters. So how are we able to come in under budget and survive with the amount of turnover we were having, the vacancies we were having at the time? We just didn't have any snow. We didn't have to face any hard winters with 12 guys, 10 guys. So we were able to survive. But above that unsustainable line we creeped above it in 19. We've been able to add 6 positions with $463,000. We've been able to add $217,000 for professional services. And I was like, why do you need $217 in professional services? Well, the good news about this increased expenditure is primarily pass-through funds. We wouldn't be sending plans out to third parties for plan review if they weren't paying us for that plan review, if they weren't paying us permit fees. So most of this professional service dollar is in some way, shape, or form pass-through funds. Yeah, we come under budget in this line item every single year. But, that's because somebody didn't submit that we anticipated submitting. For the past 2 years, 21 and 22, we've had to carry a pretty hefty amount of professional services cushion because we got a lot going on. A lot of stuff's going out to third-party review, and we've also got some economic development assistance in there, trying to build the economy for the future of the city. 82,000 of this increase in expenditures since 18 could purely be associated with, the 1.05% inflation rate that we've had since FY 18. And then we did add a $54,000 mowing contract to free up staff time to focus on other things. So basically though, $279,000 general fund investment towards all this improvement, because since that time, going into 22, we're looking at a $537,000 revenue increase. So I like to think that we got all of that for $279,000. Then we're in a much better position as a department. We can still afford to decompress a little more, as you saw from the very first FTE comparison, but we're back in a comfortable place where we're meeting all of our reporting goals and our spending goals, and now we just need to focus on actually showing the citizens out there that we're attacking their priorities. Comments on that enterprise fleet program improves our FY 22 and future outlook. For fleet repairs, we did a very comprehensive analysis of what these white fleet purchases are going to save us, saving us anywhere from $8,000 to $24,000 per year, built out into the 10-year model. The facilities division investment and major repairs improvements of existing facilities will reduce future costs in the future fiscal years. It's already paying off in contract services. Kenny came in, tackled all the existing contracts, rebid them, and we're essentially getting more contract service for less. So that fleet division, facilities division investment has really paid off. Substantial energy and fuel cost increases. Nothing we can do about that. I think it's no secret, over the next year, they're expecting a 30% fuel cost increase. That's going to apply to natural gas. So all of those little electricity probably will lag somewhere behind natural gas, but we can anticipate electricity increases. That's just going to happen. But we really like to take a look at the fuel cost impacts based on the white fleet, and we'll have to reevaluate that. It's a little tricky at this time to give exact figures and to know. Basically, you have a lot of idle time with the PD fleet and a lot of idle time with the fire fleet. That takes hours meters. Can't really do mileage calculations and vehicle usage like that. So that'll become refined over time. Staffing and professional services increase. In development service, absolutely necessary. We have to have a building official. We definitely can't go into this phase of development with a single building inspector. We need another position to help out the current building inspector. And we also need another code enforcement presence out there, especially if it can be evening and weekend hours. But for the current 2-year model, especially, any staffing increases are offset by revenue. And our investment in the mowing contract and increased spending in streets have improved our VDOT road maintenance substantially. I was blown away by the figures this year. We did a lot more street spending than I thought we did. Well above water with our actual VDOT report, our Will and Cooper survey. And our GIS and software investments will definitely help set the stage for efficiency, productivity, and reporting improvements across all divisions. Water and sewer revenues. Comments, basically it's a positive outlook for user fees, very positive outlook. Based on the development plan, we're looking at a $1.26 million per year net impact in positive direction by FY 26. That's just user fees. We can expect minor but positive budget impacts from new connection fees. As all these new businesses and homes start coming online, they will have to pay connection fees. Won't be anything like the substantial $1.26 million a year user fee increase, but it will be an effect on the budget. Tap fees. Right now, projecting around $12 million in tap fees over the next 5 years. I know this is an operating budget discussion. and tap fees aren't really geared towards operating, but they will help us boost our capital improvement ability, which then saves you some operational problems down the road. And we have some, it'll also buy us time to improve our fund balance while we wait on those user fees to grow and our debt service to drop. So it's very good news. We saw a notable increase in billing revenues to accompany the consumption increase. We always watch it. If we get a consumption increase, we should see a revenue increase behind it. We've seen that for the, it's very good news. You start worrying when your consumption goes up and your billing doesn't go up. This is just a basic breakdown of the development impacts to the water purchase and sale. 1.26 million net impact. It's actually a $1.389 million increase in user fees from the new development by FY26. But we do have this purchase price down here that we pay, and we're talking about 138,000 additional gallons of consumption a day, of additional purchase a day. There could be another line in here to paint a more clear picture of our net profits. That would be your UOSA operations and maintenance costs, what we pay based on what flows to UOSA. But with I&I, a dry season and a wet season, you get two completely different pictures of that line. I&I is such a substantial portion of your sewer flow that it'd be impossible for me to guess at what it's going to look like out to FY26. So think of this as just water only, not a whole system, not a whole utility type analysis. Water capacity, we can't talk about increased water revenues and 138,000 gallons a day of additional consumption without people starting to worry about capacity. So we'll talk about it a little bit. There's a lot of lines on this chart. I'm going to try not to get lost. But when we think of capacity, it's, we're a utility. We have a product to sell, it's water. We also sell sewer, but it's all based on the water flow. Our business is one business. We really have two different divisions to our business, water and sewer, but they're highly intertwined. All the water that flows should go into the sewer for the most part. And then our water says we're really three systems. We have a sewer system, and we actually have two separate water systems. We have a low zone over that we're buying from Manassas and a high zone that we're buying from PWCSA, the service authority. They are not married as far as capacity agreements. This chart is like a business model. It's combining both of your capacity agreements. So don't get startled at some of the first lines that pop up, because you have to remember we're operating two systems. Now, when you think of capacity, think of it as like warehouse space. You anticipate selling a certain amount of product, so you buy a certain amount of warehouse space. The bigger the warehouse you buy, the higher your fixed costs are. The bigger your lease is, the more expensive it is to keep the lights on. So in the early 2000s, we bought a lot of capacity. We anticipated a very fast, rapid development of the downtown and increased growth. We sort of got a first spurt of growth, and then things sort of died off. So we bought a big warehouse, and we weren't moving a lot of product. So it wasn't a very good place to be. This was the capacity line. We actually set this capacity line a little bit higher in 2001 because we originally bought 1 million gallons of capacity from the city of Manassas. But at that time, we had 1 million gallons capacity per day from Manassas, 1.4 million from the Prince William Service Authority. So this was actually 2.4 until we realized we had way too much capacity on the Manassas side. We were in a take or pay situation, and we were always paying. We weren't taking enough. So we actually restated that agreement and gave them back $200,000 or 200,000 gallons a day in capacity. So right now we sit at 2.2 million gallons a day total capacity for our business. 1.4 in our Prince William Service Authority system, 800,000 in our Manassas system. Now we're going to look first at our peak day. which is what your capacity is based on, how much water you draw in a day. But we're gonna look at it all the way back to 5 years, 2017. Some of you remember what was going on in 2017. We had some mystery leaks on Denver Drive. We had water popping up in the surface, flowing into the creek. We had half of Manassas Drive dug up trying to find a massive leak. We had hired contractors and everyone else to try to help us figure out where our problems were. So based on that point in time, this was our peak day. If you take that peak day that we had on the Manassas side, combine it with our peak day on the Prince William side, and draw what a peak day baseline looks like, wow, we were pretty close to our total business capacity. But most of this was all on the west end. It was all on the Manassas side. And if you look at what 138,000 gallons this day is gonna do, boy, we could be in real trouble, I guess. But this is a worst case. And remember, you're looking at Prince William Service Authority capacity with Manassas capacity, and all this development has nothing to do with Manassas capacity. All this new development is actually over here on this side, Prince William Service Authority side, where we have a substantially comfortable cushion. So yes, if we were looking at our business capacity, we could be in a little bit of trouble, but we're not. We're looking at two separate systems. So we'll look down here, even just with the basic operational improvements we made after 2017, we bought correlators and data loggers that started listening to our system constantly on the west end. And since we bought that equipment, this is where our peak day baseline looks like. So there, we have pretty substantial cushion, 400,000 gallons of cushion, just because leaks are no longer getting out of hand. We can hear them, we're listening for them constantly, and we're tracking them down as soon as they pop up. With the 138,000 gallons by FY26, you can see that with this last 3-year baseline, our entire system capacity has a nice 200,000 gallon comfortable cushion from that peak day. So we're not in really bad shape at all. But, we have to look back and say, what if things got as bad as they were in 2017? We can't let that happen. We have to be on top of that. But remember, this is our whole system. This is our whole business. This is not just one capacity agreement. Most of our issues are on the west side with the Manassas agreement. Here on the Prince William Service Authority side, that this area, this downtown area draws from, we're only about 72% capacity on the worst peak day. So there's substantial cushion in that 1.4 million that we have. This is what our average day looks like for the last 5 years. We're all the way down there. So when things are going great, it's not June, July, or August. People aren't consuming a bunch of water. It's not January on the west end, and we're not popping off water breaks on a daily basis. This is what we look like. And remember, this axis, this dollar axis, is skewed. I'll set it to 1,000 so you guys can start 1 million at the bottom so you can see the chart better. But we have a substantial cushion with our average consumption, even in our whole system. The 138,000 gallons makes our purchase look like this. Look at that cushion from our average flow added with the development added to it to where actual capacity is at. Now we're looking at where our current consumption actually lies, what the users are buying or paying for. Now the good news is that difference right here, this difference is only 5%. That's your water loss rate. Now I wish we could say that we have a 5% system water loss rate, but unfortunately we kind of know our water loss rate on the Manassas system, remember we're 2 water systems, it's probably around 15% or higher. That just means that this Prince William Service Authority side is unusually tight, very little water loss. For us to have 5% loss rate in our business capacity. Now this is where you would be with your consumption in 26, the 138,000 gallons added to it. So you can see there's this distance from your consumption up to your capacity, well, that's extra warehouse space that you probably didn't need. You know, when you're talking about running an efficient business, you don't want extra warehouse space. You want to be moving as much product as you can possibly handle. This new development is good news for everyone in the city who pays a water bill, because we couldn't stay down there with 800,000 gallons additional capacity from our daily average. What we have to watch out for is that this peak right here stays somewhere around here and doesn't start creeping up to right here. This is what triggers catastrophe, triggers violation of our capacity agreements. But the higher this little peak gets, closer to this capacity line, without this one going over, boy, that's good news. That means we're we're becoming more and more profitable in our system. And that means that we can actually start thinking about adjusting rates. But this is good news. And we probably, looking at this, could stand another 150 to 200,000 gallons capacity, but this is what we have to watch. We have to keep our system tight, and we have to make sure that we're not losing a bunch of water on a regular basis that we can't account for.
Is there a warning system as the locality approaches?
Yeah, we track our consumption, our purchase every day.
Okay.
Every single day. We check the meters during the winter time, twice a day.
I was just thinking of the UOSA service agreement. It's 95%, and then.
Oh yeah. Well, with
so
UOSA,
is that written into this agreement?
No, I can't bring UOSA into that. That's a whole. This is.
No, I mean I'm talking about something similar. The concept.
We'd be in violation for pulling a peak day more than our capacity. Now, what the direct results of that would be, that it could cause some default of our agreement, but the penalties are not squared away in these agreements. We're just simply in violation of our agreement at that point.
Okay, so there's nothing in the agreement that writes in any kind of a warning system when you get up safe.
Well, we get those warnings, and we've had those warnings from Manassas in the past, letting us know, for this period, you were up against your capacity, or for this single day, you violated your capacity. Those warnings exist in the billing model. Those types of notices are built into the language of the agreement. But once we can't control this anymore, and we're creeping above that capacity line with those peak days, that's when we have to consider buying more capacity, or we're going to be forced into buying more capacity, or our partners are going to want to go out of business with us, which they would have a right to do because we're violating our capacity agreement.
That's where I was going. Was it written into the agreement?
Yes.
Okay.
This sewer capacity is a much more complicated issue. It's an I&I challenge, but this is very good news. The closer that this consumption line gets to this capacity without this line going over capacity, the more profitable our system is. We're moving more product. We're moving closer to what we anticipated we were going to move when we set our fixed costs into motion by buying the capacity in the first place. For water sewer expenditures, you can see some major spikes here. We talked about this last year. Operations and maintenance, like I said, we cannot predict the weather, but boy, when it rains, it pours. As far as UOSA operations and maintenance costs, this was a huge rainfall year, and we also had a little spike in our water purchase, so we had a huge spike in our water and sewer expenditures. This FY20 spike, or FY21 spike, was huge hits from Fairfax Water. They were doing some substantial capital improvements that trickles down through our service authority agreement. So we had, and we also added a backflow prevention specialist. Now that position is still a recruitment process, so you can expect this little point to drop here when the actuals come in. This is a budgeted point. It'll probably drop down a little bit based on the late hiring of the backflow prevention specialist. basic comments. This operating user fee increase that we talked about is a real positive for the Water Sewer Enterprise Fund. Our consumption, our consumer consumption is getting closer to our capacity. We're closing that profit gap. We're using more of our warehouse space that we bought. We're justifying more of our fixed costs. But we have to keep an eye on that Manassas side where we're not at 72% of our capacity on a peak day, where in 2017, we were rubbing up against our capacity on a peak day. So we have to take advantage of this money and this income to say, hey, let's tighten up our system. Let's make sure we don't have to buy additional capacity from you also. Let's tackle these I&I challenges. Let's make sure that we're constantly listening to our water delivery system on the West End and making sure that this increased profit doesn't push us to buying additional capacity on either the water or sewer side. UOSA operations and maintenance fluctuates because of the rain, because of the snow. There's nothing we can do. We can tighten up our I&I, but there will always be I&I. So you're always going to have those fluctuations just based on the weather. Positive news on the PWCSA purchase rate. We got a huge hit in 21, but now they're saying for 22 that we're not going to have an increase at all. Right now, that's what they're saying. That's good news. Manassas side, not such good news. 5% increase on Manassas purchase side. And again, that's the side that causes us the most problems. So we have to focus the good news on preventing more bad news. We have to keep that side of the system very tight. Water loss gets more expensive when they're raising your rates by 5% a year. Stormwater revenues, this spike here in 2017 was when we were really trying to ramp up our stormwater division. We had a first time ever stormwater budget that became a real budget, trying to beat DEQ's goals for training and certifying personnel. And this little spike right here in revenues is kind of a misnomer because it's actually a significant reserve contribution. Major comments on stormwater revenues. We have to continue incremental rate increases to build TMDL reduction capacity. We've got about $20 to $25 million in TMDL improvements that are due in the current budget 10-year plan. And if we don't start increasing rates now, we'll have to borrow more later. The more we borrow, the more interest we pay. I'm sure that the citizens don't want to see incremental increases just to build a fund balance, but the bigger the fund balance when we execute the project, the lower the bond numbers, the less interest we'll pay. So it's kind of a juggling game. Rate increase will delay but not replace the need to borrow. We can increase the fund balance, but we're not going to put $25 million in the bank by the time our TMDL improvements are due. Site inspection revenues will ramp up. That's good news. This is the hardest revenue in the whole community development budget to predict. Site inspection revenues are basically based on the UPL for the project, which we don't really have finalized until we're taking bond paperwork and approving final site plan. It's based on linear foot of pipe and pipe size, square yardage of pavement surface, those complicated unit price list figures that you base your bond numbers on. It's really hard to look at a general subdivision concept, a master plan, and say, what are my site inspection fees going to be? But these will go up. We kept very conservative numbers in the budget. They will go up as we start to get these permits. Operating expenditures, again, this was our big ramp up. We're trying to staff the division, get everybody trained and certified. Comments on that. Our operating expenses leveled off since the big program ramp up. We actually have a decrease in expenditures planned in FY22. Again, working towards developing a fund balance, being more realistic. We only have 3 guys in the division. How much operating project type success can we have? Pond clearing and mowing has really been ramped up. The guys have come up with some new methodology using different equipment, and they've really been able to stay on top of most of the ponds with just the guys in the division, having to call very little help from streets and water sewer, which is pretty impressive. Because it used to be the entire public works crew dedicated to ponds for weeks at a time. Turnover and retention is going to be an issue with this division. This is like the new niche in government. Everybody has to have stormwater inspectors now. Everybody has to have stormwater plan reviewers now. And everybody's paying them really well. Because everybody needs them. The DEQ didn't give you a choice. You have to have the qualified, trained, and certified personnel. So it's a bit of competition amongst the jurisdictions. So that's something we're really keeping our eye on. We've had a lot of DEQ scrutiny over our VSMP program. We talked about that early on in the presentation. Is very high. And staffing may play a, staffing and pay may require reevaluation. I think that, the two guys that are doing it, consider they didn't have any knowledge in stormwater 5 years ago, are doing a pretty bang up job. They've achieved a lot of certifications, but we happen to be on the way home for a DEQ inspector, and we're undergoing an exceptional amount of scrutiny right now with our program. And we may have to actually, they don't like the way we outsource plan review, even though we have very qualified on-call engineers to do the stormwater plan review. We're not quite sure, but if we wind up in an actual program review, we may have to recommend some staffing change.
Do they not take into consideration the size of our locality?
I know, I keep saying it, but it doesn't seem to
Doesn't
help.
sink in. Okay.
Doesn't seem to help. They would like to see our system laid more out like the state legislation. They would like to see us have an actual, someone labeled a VSMP administrator, someone labeled a VSMP inspector, someone labeled a VSMP plan reviewer. And they want them to do that full time and sit in desks if they're not out in the field, looking at something. And we've got guys that are doing 3 and 4 different jobs. It's a little challenging, it's a little frustrating at times, but if we wind up in a program review, we may have to decide to do plan review in-house, get it away from a consultant base to satisfy some of the questions. If they think we need to have one person completely dedicated to field inspection at all times, I may have to recommend some staffing changes. So far, we're not in a plan and a program review, but we've been through 2 audits on the MS4 side, so I expect that sometime we might wind up in a program review.
Boy, there is no consideration for unfunded mandates on the localities. None whatsoever for impact.
Yeah, the problem is with a lot of the environmental initiatives, it's more regulatory punitive versus subsidized. So it'd be nice if they said, yes, we want to improve the environment. We're going to subsidize you or whoever to help us to do that. It's, no, you will do this or you will be punished.
Yeah.
We have to figure out how to do it.
Yes. Yeah. No consideration.
So we're currently utilizing the assistant to the director to fulfill many of our MS4 monitoring and reporting duties. We're kind of taking a group approach to tackling this whole stormwater thing. Alan has great expertise in stormwater from an entire career at Arlington. I was an E&S combined administrator for the city for many years before they implemented the stormwater VSMP program. And when Carla came on, we had the need, we had stripped down and then eventually gotten rid of the consultant services for our MS4 coordination. So it's really, you have essentially 6 staff dedicated to stormwater part-time. And that's how we pull off this program, both the MS4 and the VSMP. Solid waste revenues. Stable rates are not likely. I'm still seeing tipping fee increases. And the worst news on that is the fuel price increase. In order to get their maximum 8% per year increase, they need the indexes and fuel prices to cooperate with them, not just the tipping fee increases. We got really lucky for a lot of years, and fuel, the fuel increase was off the table for our contract hauler. Well, now it's back on the table because fuel price increases are high, and all the other indexes are supporting their increase requests. A fixed maximum increase to try to cure that problem is only good as long as a hauler wants to continue. Unfortunately, this is a competitive business. We know that our current hauler was over $200,000 cheaper than the next low bidder. And if we try to force a trash hauler into a contract that's too restrictive on increases and try to control our fixed costs too much, they just won't want to renew. And we'll be back out issuing an RFP. We will get a new source of revenue for our actual solid waste revenue stream. When Dominion Transfer comes on board, we'll get a host fee based on the tonnage that they collect. So a piece of revenue that we'll try to understand as they start operations. It's a tiered system under the current agreement, so they'll pay more and more, a higher level of host fee per tonnage every year for 5 years until they get to the actual final level of host fee. Solid waste expenditures. The green line at the bottom is your contract costs. The blue line at the top is the total solid waste fund expenditures. The green line is pretty consistent. Whenever they could entitle themselves to a 5% tipping fee increase, which has pretty much been the last 3 to 4 years, they've all been justified. They ask for them. The difference between the two lines is really city function. And hazardous waste days. Things we try to do for our citizens are just the cost of us needing extra dumpsters for events, doing cleanup things off the street. We keep a 30-yard dumpster at Public Works every time somebody's naughty and empties out of the house onto the street. We can try to coordinate with the owner before everybody's sick of it and says, just go get it and put it in the dumpster. And then it costs us to have that dumpster tipped. So you start to see the divergence between the fixed contract fee that serves our citizens and city operations. Our current hauler has kept rates reasonably low. They have actually missed the opportunity to request some increases in years past, especially compared to what the industry trend has been. But tipping fees and rising fuel prices open us up to maximum annual increases with whoever we go with until the industry changes. Difference in contract cost to total expenditures, we just spoke about that. The difference between the green line and the blue line is really the city increasing its service offerings and being more of a city, having dumpsters available for public events, doing cleanup around our own facilities and parks. We have optimism about the future to household hazardous waste days. That large spike you saw in the expenditures chart was when we had a very expensive household hazardous waste day. Now, when Dominion Transfer comes on board, we'll no longer have to host these events over in Manassas. They'll be here in the middle of our city in the Connor Center, and we will no longer pay these ridiculous per container rates. No matter how much someone puts in them, we'll actually pay the haul-off tipping rate produced by Dominion. So we'll have a minimum of 8 household hazardous waste events a year, and we anticipate right now that those 8 events will probably cost a fraction of what one event costs right now. So some really good opportunities there. Again, no positive outlook for the recycling industry. I'm not hearing anything sweeping changes about China's stance on contaminated recycled materials, which still leaves the industry reeling. There's a lot of recyclable material that's just going to the garbage stream because of the levels of contamination that China is looking for. So I don't think we're going to see a break in this tipping fee trend for quite some time. But I think trash tipping might level off, but recycling tipping is still going to keep going up and up. Department-wide goals, we need to develop standard SOPs within each division. Again, we have some serious succession planning on the public works side. We need to develop recruitment and retention strategies. Again, looking at that serious succession planning on the public works side, but also looking at our development services division and knowing that, you know, to keep up with this development, we're going to have to keep qualified people on. We can't have vacancies for long periods in the middle of a busy phase of development, or we'll be outsourcing inspections and plan review, which gets expensive. Continue coordination with finance. Say this every year. I love it. You know, we need to work with finance to make sure that audits go smoothly. When audits don't go smoothly and we can't answer questions quickly, we get pulled away from our operations for too long. The better we keep up with the expectations of the auditors, the better information we provide to finance every year, the smoother the process goes. And it helps both of our departments. We need to utilize new software for better tracking. You know, it's division-wide, it's department-wide. We need to improve our tracking and reporting. And that's all I have. Sorry,
No. Calvin, that was a wonderful presentation. You cleared the room. No, it was a wonderful presentation. I love meaty and fact-filled presentations, and it's obvious to us that you've got your hands full. You really do. Wow. Let's start with questions. So let's start with our folks at home. Councilman Member Javed, are you there? And do you have any questions or comments?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, good. Hey, good evening, Alvin. Got a question about, you said that we would not have to do additional water purchase for the downtown development? Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, correct. You have 1.4 million gallons of capacity on the Prince William Service Authority side. All of the rezonings and proposed phases of downtown development all come off of that side. And even in your peak day condition, which is your worst day condition, you're only at 72% of your capacity. This development, everything that we currently have projected, at least in the 6-year model, won't even probably take you up to 73 or 74%. You're talking 138,000 gallons a day additional on a 1.4 million gallon a day agreement. So it's no, the downtown development doesn't drive any sort of need.
Yeah, historically, I mean, last couple of years, it's just been increasing. So I'm just curious how, I guess, we have a big capacity, I guess that's what I'm understanding.
Are you talking about our actual purchase?
Yeah, the actual purchase has been increasing probably the last 3 years.
Or gallons of consumption level?
I think it's prices.
Yeah, prices have increased drastically, which drives our expenditures way up, but our gallons per day of purchase have not changed dramatically.
Got it. And then I got another question. I guess in your professional opinion, I guess you're budgeting a part-time code enforcement help. Would it be beneficial, in your opinion, to have a full-time instead?
I'm biased on that. Yeah, can I get 4? No, it's I came into the city in code enforcement 15 years ago. And there were 2 full-time and 2 part-time inspectors when I joined the city. So I know that you can justify that. It's a major goal to set. It's a major expenditure. But can you keep even 3 FTEs busy in code enforcement? Absolutely. You know, you could probably keep 6 FTEs and code enforcement busy. It's all about, what do we have to do to meet the goal, to meet the expectations. 1.5 gets you a lot farther than 1, especially if you target that 0.5 at evenings and weekends when there's currently no presence. So could you do more with a full-time? I don't know. It's probably arguable that you could, but you could also say that if you're willing to dedicate that part-time position to evenings and weekends, there's a substantially separate benefit there, because currently your full-time presence is during daily hours. That's typical of a full-time position, whereas a part-time position, you easily set the expectation up front for evening and weekend work, and you get that presence in the hours that there's currently no presence. So yes, I mean, obviously any FTEs going from 0.5 to 1 is going to improve, but you can always be creative with how you use your part-time and get presence when you don't currently have presence, and there's an argument that you're doing just as much good.
And to see the staffing plan, there's a lot of positions that I think can be justified, and certainly I think we could use even more code enforcement, building support. You see there that our development services managers, also our city planners, also our city zoning administrators, also our city zoning enforcer, right? There's a lot of positions that can be justified. I've tried to kind of balance tax base with what we need, right? And trying to keep up while trying to, again, slicing that pie. But certainly I think you can justify a lot more positions. The code enforcement is absolutely one that you could justify going to a full-time or having even more staff.
Okay. Do you have a follow-up?
Thank you for that. I do have one last question. About your hazardous waste, you said that we would start doing that in-house in the city. So would that mean we would take away that line item in the budget in the future?
Okay, so probably not. We would still want to carry a separate line item. So what we're transitioning from is complicated program scheduled household hazardous waste days at the waste management transfer station in the city of Manassas, where we were once upon a time doing regularly 2 a year, but when they got up to above $15,000 a piece, we had to dial that back to 1 event per year. When Dominion Transfers opens, the operating agreement we have with them will require them to host 8 household hazardous waste Saturdays a year. We will no longer be charged like with the setup at Waste Management, where we make a container for a specific type of hazardous material available, and that container comes with a fixed cost. So we're not automatically going to be paying $15,000 to $20,000 per household hazardous waste day. We will pay based on a proof of tipping for those materials provided by Dominion Transfer. So we'll still need a line item to bill household hazardous waste to, but we won't be doing it in a contract basis. It'll be handled through a regular operating agreement with our partner in the city, Dominion Transfer. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you, Tom.
Do you have a follow-up, Hasib? Is that it?
Yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor Banks?
Hey, Calvin, thank you for the presentation. My question is in regards to the water and sewer, in particular, slide 25. I'm trying to find a way that we can reduce, if not the water rate, but the base rate. So let's say we do have the residential development occurs and we have a bunch of new residents. And what you have here on slide 25 in terms of that red line, the worst case peak day,
that you don't experience that or even near that for the next 3 or 4 years, could that justify a decrease in the base rate or even the water rate for our citizens?
Yeah, well, that's sort of the discussion to be had. First of all, this is not a realistic situation that we're actually in, because this entire worst day peak is only related to the Manassas side of the system. This blue line represents both of our capacity agreements, and yes, if we coupled our capacity, our consumptions, our purchases together as a business, then yeah, this is problematic. But remember, this is based on a bad day in FY17. That was the worst day we've seen in 5 years. And it really only got us a warning letter from the city of Manassas. Your worst day that you've seen on your Prince William Service Authority side was very, very, very slightly over 1 million gallons, 1.013 million gallons a day. You have 1.4 million gallons of capacity. So when all of this development is on the Prince William Service Authority side, and all of this development that we've currently rezoned and planned only represents 138,000 additional gallons a day, you're not going to rub up against your Prince William Service Authority capacity with new development unless you tell me that you're going to develop 2,000 additional homes tomorrow. And even then, we have to do the numbers. You might not still be brushing up against your capacity. The capacity we have was based on anticipated high restaurant use, industrial type use, meters bigger than 5/8. You can only push so much water through a 5/8 meter, and that's pretty much what we're adding. Now you add some 3 and 4 inch meters into that equation, now you're talking about substantial consumption increases. I'm not seeing any development plans that include any 4-inch meters. So as long as we're talking about small restaurants and 5/8 meters for residential, we'd have to do a whole lot of development to be worried about your service authority agreement.
Yeah. And Preston, if I
now,
so the base fee, remember, it only really covers 2/3 of your debt cost. So it's not even fulfilling the actual intent of that $46. It's not even covering our current debt. So the development has definitely helped, because if you notice previous year's budgets, the pressure on rates to go higher was pretty dramatic. Now they're hovering at an average about 1%. Because of the downtown development, there's a couple things that could be done. Number one, if we get additional external funding, so this American Rescue Plan funding is significant, and we can use it for water and sewer infrastructure, right? Because you don't want to defund your system. To Calvin's point, you want to expand your number of customers while also reducing your leakage, right? You don't want to have too many leaks. That means you have to keep investing in infrastructure. So if we get grants, federal funding for infrastructure, that could help put or reduce pressure even further on rates, allow you to potentially even reduce the rate. But again, the admin fee right now does not even cover the debt. Where the admin fee can be reduced is as you get closer to FY29, FY30, when the debt starts to drop pretty dramatically. The years before that, if the development is successful, if you want to spend down your reserve levels before they're below their target, but not to the point where you get to negative, but knowing that you're going to be able to build up reserves pretty quickly as that goes down, you can take that risk and start reducing rates in that FY26 period. But before then, I wouldn't advise that, because of the uncertainty about what's actually going to happen with the downtown, again, unless you're flooded with a lot of federal funding for water and sewer infrastructure.
That's a good point. So getting back to the water rate and trying to reduce that, on top of what Calvin mentioned, in terms of most of the development is going to be on the Prince William side, the Prince William, our water purchase is more than the Manassas purchase. Is that right? It's higher?
What we talking about the base pay per
It's not working.
What we pay?
with the 5% increase, I'd have to check. I can't remember what the Manassas rate is off the top of my head. But
What? I would think that the Prince William, we pay more for Prince William's water than Manassas just because we got more residents on this side.
well, the total expenditure is higher, but what we pay per T-gal through the meter, running pretty neck and neck, I think. We had a massive Prince William Service Authority spike. We had some not so massive increases from Manassas for a couple years, but now Prince William Service Authority is leveling off for a year, and Manassas is increasing. I wouldn't say that there's a dramatic difference.
Okay. Well, my last comment would be that there seems to be some drivers here that can possibly cause or possibly justify a rate decrease in water. I mean, you've got the residential development, the increase of economies of scale. You've got only one side, the Manassas side, that's going to increase how much we're going to pay in the water purchasing agreement. You know, since we can't reduce the base rate, as Laszlo pointed out, because it doesn't match the debt until 2029, it may be possible in the near future we can do a water rate decrease.
Well, we'd have to close off a substantially larger amount of the gap, and then again, the risk is if you close off too much of the gap between what your consumers are purchasing and what your capacity line is, then those peak day spikes can put you in jeopardy of violating your capacity agreement. But the system will be more profitable, but you still have operational increases and actual increases coming. We have not touched rates in a long time. We're playing catch up by not playing increase. So as our neighbors increase their rates, our situation looks better and better every day. Will we be able to decrease rates? No, maybe not. But can we stave off increases because of these profitability increases? Yes. And does staving off increases actually make your rate lower comparatively? Absolutely. So will we be the highest water rate? Not for long at this rate. Our neighbors are clearly paying more and more for water every day because our rates are based on their rates. So if our rates to purchase are going up, so are the consumer rates in our supplying jurisdictions.
And I don't think we have the economies of scale that we appear to have or that people think we have.
Yeah, we don't. We're a very small jurisdiction in comparison. So the more customers you have, the more you can spread those.
So we don't have that, Preston, at all.
Plus, we have a lot of capital expenditures that we've been deferring, right, because of cash limitations. We have to do those capital improvements, or else the risk right here is that we start seeing massive amount of leaks, and we reach capacity on the west side because of those leaks, because we're not investing in our infrastructure. So that's a big risk of infrastructure.
Yeah, that was certainly the biggest point of my intention there, was to say, this is a great outlook. You're adding customers, which improves the profitability of your system. But if we neglect operations and we don't stay on top of leak detection and we brush up against that Manassas capacity on the Manassas side, all of this work to wait out these debt service agreements to start dropping off, all of this work to get to a more profitable position by waiting for development to catch up with our original capacity anticipations, it's all for naught if we're immediately forced to buy more capacity, because we're not.
That's kind of crazy.
If we want to run a busy warehouse, it has to be a tight ship. If we want to run a profitable business, it has to be a tight ship. So we have to show that we're willing to take some of these increases and put them towards improved operation and debt.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
That's it. Thank you, Preston. Councilmember Amaya?
No questions at this time.
Councilmember Moore?
Thanks for a great presentation, Calvin. Very interesting. I'm really interested in the tight ship that you spoke of and improving our inflow and infiltration problem. Do we require a point of sale? Because I think part of the problem is the laterals and the private laterals. Do we require inspection at point of sale when people sell their homes to inspect their laterals to make sure it's not leaking or causing I&I problems?
No, you mean so in this city, we own the lateral from the main to the
Sidewalk or property line, okay.
They own the lateral from the property line to their.
Right, and I'm guessing that it's leaking from the property line to the house. And so if we require when they sell their house that they do an inspection of that lateral, and if there is any leakage that they have to make the repairs at that time, it would help solve our problem citywide.
The city isn't normally involved in private real estate.
It would be a requirement, yeah, I know.
We would have to pass, are you suggesting we pass legislation?
Yes, man, yes, sir. We've done that in other cities.
Okay.
It's, I think it gets at the I&I problem because citizens have to make those repairs, and there's no motivation to make them if the leaks exist and it's causing them citywide problems for us. But if they get ready to sell that house, they would have to have an inspection from the property line to their house and make that I&I correction.
That, we're thinking the things that we've brainstormed on laterals is basically, if it doesn't do us any good to line our portion of the lateral, you're just pushing the leak.
That's right, right.
To their leaky lateral.
Right.
So we said, well, if we're gonna line laterals, is there a cost share that we could enter into with people? Or is there a tax incentive program that we could offer for people who replace aging leaky laterals? Something like that.
That's good.
To go as far as to say that you have to leak test and prove your lateral before you can sell your home. As a citizen, I don't want to have to do it, but as the guy that's responsible for reducing I&I, I'm up for suggestions.
Well, the carrot approach is good too. I mean, it doesn't have to be a stick totally, but we can give some kind of incentive for them to do it. Otherwise, there's no incentive right now for them to make that repair in their leaking laterals.
Most of our lateral replacements are still on the west end, aging Orangeburg pipe that's actually catastrophically failed and forced someone into a backup position where they now have to replace. There's no voluntary sewer lateral replacements. We've brainstormed different options. I haven't heard that one before, but you're not going to hear me say it's a horrible idea because
good. We should look at it.
Anything that brings we're at that point where we have to figure out how to deal with the private property owner and what they control of the system, because that's the next phase.
And that's a big phase. And I imagine the EPA and other places are going to start as that problem becomes more and more. Have we done a smoke test to determine what the magnitude of the problem is with the leakage in I&I?
No, we did. We were very interested in the results of some Prince William County Service Authority work in lining laterals.
Mm-hmm.
They actually absorbed the cost and lined all the way from the main up the private lateral to the clean out of the house. Immediate results weren't that promising. Now, was it because the building drain itself was leaking, allowing water in above the lateral? Never really quite got to it. But no, we have not looked into smoke testing. Cammering would probably be first step on the west end, because there's so much remaining Orangeburg and 60, 70-year-old cast iron that if you smoke tested a system, you might just see smoke coming everywhere. Probably first step would be to televise, look for obvious deformities, sections that we know can't be lined and protected, that we need to immediately get in and replace, and then start looking at what's remaining that's capable of being lined, smoke test that, and try to prioritize what can still be relined with smoke testing.
And if I could borrow one of the questions that Councilmember Hampton has been using is, as far as trends, but a little more specific, have you seen any of the legislation that's being proposed at the federal level for the infrastructure that President Biden is proposing? And have we seen what some of the things that are being recommended there that might help us with our water, sewer, and streets?
Admittedly, no.
Okay, this was wondering.
Admittedly, no.
Maybe our city manager has looked at that and.
We need a legislative liaison.
That's what we do, because that's a big one.
That's a big one, yeah. Now, merchant.
They are probably super busy.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Right.
saying. That's what usually the legislative offices will do. They'll research state laws, federal laws.
Absolutely.
To see what's happening, advocate for what we should lobby for. Now, Merchant McIntyre, once, they get more information, they've been pretty good at kind of keeping us up to date on things. So
That's good.
as more information comes out, whenever it's passed, and the opportunities that are there, they'll present to us as options. So they provide us a long document or spreadsheet of different grant options. The problem is we need kind of staff bandwidth to support they do most of the work. So we just submitted a grant application for additional healthcare funding for our city. I did very little work for that. I was the lead staff person for that. They wrote up the whole thing, and I just went in and made some edits to the budget on it. So they'll do that. They'll offer help, but still, each time it's a staff involvement. So there's the problem with Calvin's department is being so short-staffed. A lot of the grants are for him, but that's a lot of. And even though Merchant McIntyre will help with drafting the majority, they still need our input for understanding of kind of what our requirements are. But certainly, we'll look into all those opportunities, and I'm very hopeful that we have some good infrastructure opportunities with that bill to improve our overarching city infrastructure. And
we can all hope.
Yeah,
and pray. Good. Thank you, Calvin, for the excellent report. Appreciate it. Thank you.
No questions. Thank you.
Yep. Well, first I want to thank your team, because every time a citizen calls me or I find something and I send to Laszlo, you guys go over there and you take care of it right away. So thank you. So I also had the other question I wanted to know, is it possible for us to see the schedule for storm water maintenance, the stream, and I'm sorry, my voice is going. Taking care of the streams, especially in preparation for storms, that type of things, because this way we get a better feel of just the magnitude of work that goes into it.
With stormwater, I understand the stream questions, but stormwater maintenance.
Yeah, I might be it's late and I might be getting things confused, but like the ponds and things like that.
We could try to lay out, that's a big ask. There's several different pieces and approaches to storm. We've got the MS4 obligations, which actually obligate us to inspect both private and city-owned structures. Then we have maintenance obligation, which we would consider just basic operations and maintenance, which is mowing, making sure the snorkels and the drain down orifices and things are actually free of obstruction and the structures functioning. And then there's more complicated maintenance like mucking out, the basic fence repairs, refencings, things like that, more costly and time consuming. With a schedule.
But just even like a high level thing, is that something that happens quarterly during a certain quarter because growth occurs more because it's hot weather. I'm not looking for a work breakdown schedule because I have no desire to sit there and look at WBS, but something high level.
The major issue that we encounter currently with streams, that particular question, is that we don't actually have easement over all the streams.
So how do you go about going after them? You just
We knock on doors, we walk the creek, we try to stay in the creek, and if we see something in the creek that's going to be a hazard during the upcoming event, we go knock on doors. Usually it's a cooperative effort between code enforcement and public works, and we'll go down, say, Lambert Drive, and if somebody's piled debris and things up along their property line along the creek, we'll ask them to remove it. If it's actual things that they can't do immediately, like fallen trees over the stream, we'll actually get in there and cut them, but we'll use public works forces to do it because we don't want to see flooding.
Right.
But we don't have a maintenance obligation to it because we don't have easement over. I don't think either Flat Branch tributary the city has any easement. I know we don't over Flat Branch Trib 2.
But yet we're held responsible keeping it clean.
It is, well, the property lines go over the stream. So whoever's property encompasses the stream, it would be their maintenance responsibility. But yeah, we do those efforts by permission, not by maintenance obligation, and we don't have the right of entry without the permission.
Okay, and so you just kind of do it, it's kind of like hit or miss, or?
No, if we're seeing a major storm in the forecast and potential flash flooding, the crew's out there walking, we have a fairly regular routine. We walk
Okay.
the Flat Branch to make sure, essentially from the Baptist church all the way down to below Denver, to make sure, we've got Courtney Culvert there that could obstruct. We've got the Denver culvert that could obstruct. So we're focused on anything upstream of those to make sure that we don't have culvert obstructions that could cause increased flooding. And then the ponds, we have to get out there and make sure the orifices are clear and that they're ready for a major storm, or else you'll get, toppling of the spillway, which can cause dramatic impacts downstream.
Okay.
One of the challenges, so if you notice, like when you ask PD or fire for data, they already have software platforms that they've been using for years, so they're going to be able to come back and give you the data. We didn't have that Calvin's department, that's why we went ahead and started the implementation. We purchased and are starting to implement U Solutions, which is kind of the community development version of that to do data analysis. But it's a complicated implementation, and
As most implementations are.
and for example, today Calvin was with Chris and they were kind of doing some of the training stuff. And guess who pulled Calvin away today?
You.
Yes. So it's going to take us a while right now. The schedule that Chris has for implementation is hopefully by the fall.
Right.
Yeah, but even then, you're starting to input data. So it's going to take a while for us to get there. But we recognize that was kind of a limitation that we wanted to get each department to be able to provide better data analysis. Luckily, the state does some of that for us for DSS. Jay does in his software. He can do the same thing as well. So we wanted to help Calvin actually have now a software to do that. It's going to take a while to do the implementation.
Okay. And then regarding the transportation manager, project manager, or I should say program, is it a program manager?
Yeah.
Which is a little bit higher than a project manager. Is there certain certifications that individual has to have? Because my world of project management is a little bit different than transportation.
We ideally would love to find somebody coming in with a PMP. There is a VDOT certification that they have to work on federally funded projects. There is no such requirement currently for the revenue sharing program, but I went through the VDOT training so I can work on I can manage federal projects for the city. And Alan actually started that. I can't remember if he got his certification or not, but they would have to get that as soon as they came to the city so that they could work on a project that had federal funding on it. But we would be seeking out a PMP.
Okay. When you get ready for that, just reach out to me, and I've got some contacts at PMI WDC that can help you put something up on their website, and that's your great source. The good thing is the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area has, actually that chapter has the most PMPs anywhere in the U.S., I think even the world. So.
Yeah, that's the one qualification. You're going to have some transportation experience. You're definitely not going to walk into this job without preferably VDOT experience.
Okay.
Someone, from Virginia or DC, Maryland area that's worked on VDOT projects in the past and understands all the VDOT terminology, but definitely a PMP.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And then my last question has to do with code enforcement. Is there any way that we can get some metrics on the number of cases called in and the number of cases outstanding? I don't want the actual where the people live, but just so I can get a baseline of what we're seeing.
We did that back at the town hall, and
we gave a couple-year breakdown in the fall of the different calls for service.
Yeah, the early this year has been very difficult. Our code enforcement inspector was on long-term FMLA, so it was essentially Mickey and Rick when we would get complaints in, finding the time to address the worst of the complaints. So
she also had cover for building permit officer as well.
Right.
We had that position.
Right, and I understand that.
Permit tech. So essentially, our code enforcement inspector sat at the permit technician chair for the entire time when we were filling that position. So it's been since that town hall. I can tell you the numbers are sparse, not impressive.
Okay.
But yeah, we did offer that at the town hall, and we do track it. We can, that's the big goal of SmartGov, is helping that code enforcement inspector. When there was a code enforcement database, inspectors were able, full-time inspectors, easily carry 80 to 120 active cases. Why? Because you don't lose track of your stuff.
Right.
You're getting reminders. You can query and report on open cases, closed cases, case follow-ups for cases. Without a piece of software like that, trying to do things in Excel, you have to keep your caseload somewhat constrained or you're going to lose track of it.
Right.
So I've really noticed it's, where if you were to ask me to pull a report from the code enforcement database back in 2008, both full-time inspectors were carrying 80 to 120 active cases at a time.
Right. So is there a way we can get those numbers from that town hall? And then since it's been really sparse, just kind of add it. So at least we can have, and I'm not really so worried about exact numbers, but so that we can have a universe of what's out there. Because I will be honest, I drove around for 3 hours last Sunday and just did a windshield survey. And in a short amount of little streets, I found 28 violations that I could just see out of my own eye. And I even pointed one of them out to you today. So those are the type of thing. I mean, I understand the constraints of the staff, but at the same time, citizens they're upset, and I know because I hear it and I've lived it myself. So if we could see the numbers and then have a litmus test, a baseline, so that when we get that part-time code enforcer come in, then we can actually quantify, the increase and how much impact he or she has done on the city. Thank you. That's all I got.
Okay, we have an email from Councilmember Javed. His question is, what are some of the developments taking place right now throughout the city, active, pending, and future?
Okay, so currently, right here, the Village of Manassas Park, which will be your city hall, your 6,000 square foot restaurant pad next to City Hall, the VRE parking garage, which isn't quite permitted yet, but is imminent and obvious. With that, the 300 residential 2/2s. The current rezoning beyond that is for 395 additional apartments in what we call phase 4. That is rezoned. The anticipation we usually make is once you rezone something for residential, it's going to get built. And that's not really the kind of thing that people walk away from. We have 13 townhouses that are the building permit or the building plans are reviewed. The pads were completed last summer, and the building permits will be issued over the next couple months whenever they come in and pick up their approved plans. We also have a steakhouse site plan that's been, I think it's on 3rd submission now, so we anticipate that being approved early summer. 8-acre phase 2, which is Park Tower 2, another 7-story, 110 residential unit apartment complex. And with 8-acre phase 2, there's also a 45,000 square foot office building. Anything I'm missing?
No, that's it.
Yeah, but that is all. When you look at these numbers from 22 to 26, that's all we've anticipated to this point. I will tell you, we do have a site plan application for Mr. Wilmore's tract right there. It won't be building inspection intensive, but there will be site permit fees for it. There won't be any buildings that we've seen on the plan so far. It's a storage yard, but that's what we're anticipating.
Okay, thank you, Calvin. Thank you very much. That was wonderful. Moving on to city manager update on the Mosby Blighted House demo.
Can this just be a general manager time, because I have 3 items to go over?
Oh, yes. Absolutely, yeah.
Mosby home update. So that was a project that was approved in the budget amendment in mid-December of 2020, so just a few months ago, to demolish that property. Once we had the legal ability to do so, we contracted with an attorney to help us contact all of the owners of the house who were scattered across different states. As you know, someone passed away, it was imperative passed on to their children, so we had to identify all of the different homeowners. We finally were able to do so. On March 25th, we sent them a letter notifying them that in 61 days from March 25th, which so I think that would be sometime in the May 20 range, we'd be demolishing the home unless they took care of it because of the health conditions or the negative health ramifications to the neighbors surrounding that property. So Calvin had developed an RFP for contractors to come out and bid on that, and that RFP closed last Friday, so we had bids. That allowed us to call contractors this morning just to see who was able to mobilize. And then this morning I was informed that the front wall had already collapsed and all the items that were stored in the house had started falling off into the front yard. So it was clearly a public health nuisance. We had a strange raccoon there this weekend as well that our police had to take care of. So there's wildlife, rats, other things there that prompted us to have to take immediate action this morning to have the house torn down and demolished and removed. And that's what our public works crew took on. We tried to reach out to contractors, but we didn't blame them for not being so quick to respond, because we gave them an hour essentially to tell us whether they could get it done for certain today, because our public works crew was ready to do so. We decided at 11 o'clock just to move forward with our own public works crew to do the demolition. They had secured the necessary equipment to do so and partner with Patriot to get the dumpsters out there, and they were able to demolish the house today and remove the majority of the items through dumpsters. The hauler stopped working at a certain time, so we had to move the remaining dumpsters to the public works yard overnight. Tomorrow those will be hauled away, and then we have probably another 2 dumpsters still worth of debris still at the current site that's been covered for this evening, but tomorrow we'll go ahead and clear out the rest of it. The budget at this point, when you combine with what Calvin and his team have done, of about $9,100, talking about another $500 for PD action this morning and towing a couple of vehicles that were on the property. So you're under $10,000 for the budget at this point, and we budgeted $50,000. We received bids kind of, along a spectrum of ranges. We don't know if we're done at this point. We've taken it down to the floor. So Calvin's gonna have to assess once all the debris is gone, what we're gonna have to do with the floor, because there is an asbestos concern with the flooring. So we're not completely done, but at least from a resident concern for the surrounding area of immediate nature, we're done. But the next step, once the debris is removed again, Calvin will go out and inspect the floor and see what the next steps are with that. So there may be some additional costs associated with that final piece to mitigate, to ensure the safety of the residents of the surrounding area. So I just want to commend Public Works, Chris Simmons. Calvin talks about those retirements. I don't know how we're going to do it when these senior employees are going to retire. They mean so much to our city. I was telling Calvin this afternoon that between this and Mosby, the way I see this crew operate, I said it's Army efficiency. It's what I was accustomed to in the Army, where you just figure it out, right? So we had some issue with equipment today, leaking fluid, wasn't working. Tommy comes out and he fixes it, our mechanic, right? They get it going to find ways to get things done. So it's a very impressive, hardworking team led by Chris Simmons, and so they are to be commended for how quickly they respond to these types of emergencies that are just incredibly creative and problem solvers that we need for this community. So I'm very appreciative of Calvin and his entire team. PD will be responding as well to support the effort. We got it done quickly, and we're sorry for residents. It's have been done quicker. But again, there with private property rights and just everything we've been dealing with the last few years, hopefully we can keep getting better at these things and getting them done. But it's always usually the difficult part is tracking down legal owners, because you can't just, we don't want government to have that kind of power where you just go in anyone's property and tear down someone's house. You want to make sure you're following all the steps of informing all people who have property rights of the actions that we're going to be taking and doing everything according to the law. So having a dean and then Courtney to help us out with the legal foundations, I want to thank them as well, because they did a quick analysis for us this morning as well about what our options were, so we can make a decision. So again, it was done under budget at this point, and done very well by Calvin.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Laszlo. Mr. Mike Smith says Public Works did a great job at the Mosby House. And to Laura, good question on code enforcement metrics. From Mike Smith.
Yeah.
Any questions on Mosby before I?
No.
For the groundbreaking ceremony this Thursday, I know we have Jeanette who will be speaking. With Delegate Rome has agreed to say a few words. Is there anyone else on the governing body? We've set aside a good 20 minutes for people to say a few things. Does anyone else on the governing body, would anyone else like to say a few words so we can just kind of pencil you into the program?
I think I would like to, being a lifetimer here, and this is the third City Hall. I won't say much, but, and I can actually talk briefly, but I'll double check with you, Jeanette, to make sure that what I'm saying doesn't, what we had to say that not kind of overlap. So
okay, sure.
Tomorrow I'll check.
Yeah.
I'll check with you.
Sure.
Anybody else?
We all get shovels, right?
Yeah, we'll all get shovels. Preston or Hasib?
Well, most importantly, Laszlo will have a shovel, right? Okay.
Excellent.
And I do recommend, and I was going to send this email, Dean should be there with us. I recommend the 7 governing body members, Delegate Rome and Dean and myself. Dean has been incredibly instrumental since he's been here in the early 2000s of making this happen, and he's kind of set the foundations to allow us to do what we did, and he was there with me throughout this agreement, this complex, comprehensive public-private partnership could not have been done without Dean reviewing everything, negotiating everything, and more importantly, he also introduced me to a gentleman named Andrew Laniski, who was the critical person who then put us in contact with Norman Scott. So without Dean, this would not have happened, so he needs to be up there with us. He's just been an incredible source of value for our city over the last 20 years.
Totally agree, yeah.
Okay, so thank you, Councilmember Hampton. We'll add you to the program, say a few words. And then just want to note logistically, so they did the median improvements. I don't know if you saw that. They did it pretty quickly. It didn't take the whole time that they stated. So the median work is done. Park Center Court will now be closed starting this Saturday. So when you come in next week, you use kind of the route. So we'll push that messaging out tonight, but they're ready to go. They're ready to start demolition here. They're still trying to close out a few things with Columbia Gas, but hopefully demolition will happen within the next couple of weeks of some of these buildings here on our side. So a lot of demolition going on in the city, but for good purposes. And that's all I have for the manager report. I do have some budget updates as well. I don't know if you want me to do that right now or when you go to the next agenda item.
Well, what are your updates?
Yeah, I can go over them. So we talked about some of them last time. I just wanted to mention that we did make some changes to the spreadsheet, and we'll be posting that on the website tomorrow. The big items that changed, you scroll to them. So we talked about the parking enforcement vehicle, how we forgot to put that into the capital budget. I'll kind of read what that is here. Let me scroll up real quick. But we put the technology piece, which was roughly $52,000, and then the vehicle itself, which was $35,000 into the FY22 budget. It's not cooperating, so I'm going to have to just here. We made a couple adjustments with some salary errors at the fire department and HR department. So when you compare spreadsheets, you'll see the salary line items are a little bit different there. And then the last piece, the major change that we made, the whole overnight commercial vehicle parking prohibition that we discussed at the parking town hall. So we added a slide in the CIP, and in the CIP itself, the spreadsheet, you'll see a cost estimate for what that would cost if we're gonna do it in FY22. It's $250,000 is his team's best assessment to get the signs up throughout the city in 1 year. And again, we'd wanna have them all up before we actually start enforcing to ensure that we're equitably enforcing across the city. So you'll see a slide in next week's presentation, or if you watch the Planning Commission meeting tomorrow night, I'll go over that slide update of these two projects, the parking enforcement vehicle, which you've already seen and approved, and then also the street sign change or addition for the overnight commercial vehicle prohibition. Mickey's already crafted the ordinance amendment, so that's being reviewed by Dean right now. We hope to present a draft to you all in May for what that ordinance will look like. The Planning Commission will receive it first, and then we'll come back to you all. But again, we have plenty of time to act on it, because we can't enforce until the signs are actually up, and that's going to take some time. But so it's more important right now, it's just a discussion. Are we ready to pull the trigger? Do we want to fund this? How do we want to fund this? And you know, what's the ordinance language looking like, so we can. So those were the kind of four key changes from the spreadsheet from what I presented last time.
Is it possible you can email us the slides? Or is it too, you have to present it to the planning?
I'll email you the Planning Commission slides. You're talking about these capital projects?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
they will have those 2 slides.
Yes.
Next Wednesday, so this weekend, you're gonna get a very long 100 slide, which Alana's already seen because she serves on the Planning Commission, that lists every single project.
Yes.
So you're gonna get that this weekend anyways, but I can email you.
128 pages.
What I'm gonna present tomorrow. My presentation to the Planning Commission tomorrow is a lot shorter, because I'm just briefing them on changes from the last time I briefed them in February, plus now including some revenues, because when I briefed the Planning Commissions in February, I still don't have the revenue picture to fully inform them on the CIP.
And then we're dealing with the CIP at the next council meeting?
April 20th, this coming Tuesday, you'll get a comprehensive presentation from each department that'll go over every single project.
Can we get a printout prior to the meeting? Because it's easier for me to go through the
The actual
slides.
paper document?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Daryl.
So we need
So
to get
much
Lana
easier.
and see Tony back here. You all met Tony? So she's-
Yes.
Oh, yes, the budget.
Yeah, so Tony and I will make sure that Lana and you will get a copy, and then.
Good, thank you.
Lana can help us with the paper copies.
I don't need a copy.
You don't want another 100 pages?
We could save a tree.
And if you just let me know when it's available, I'll just come on up here and pick it up and just head back home.
So you don't want paper?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, because I'm gonna have to print it myself. I'm like Daryl, I can't read it off.
Have paper in front, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, we're old.
Old school. Yeah.
Most of us like to be able to take
Yeah.
notes on that. Yeah, absolutely.
That's good to know, so we'll.
Yeah.
And also, our goal is on Tuesday night, not only will you get a CIP presentation with the slides provided to you beforehand, because they're pretty much done. I just need to now incorporate some additional things I'm going to do for the Planning Commission tomorrow night. But you'll also get the budget book on next Tuesday, and that's another long read. That's over 100 pages as well, a Word document that describes each line item if you want more detail. So it's all out there if you want to know kind of everything about the budget, and to inform you so you can start deliberating on what edits you want to make to the budget, or again, that the big outstanding thing right now is adding that $250,000. I didn't use MBTA money for that street signs project. We can. That's going to be kind of a discussion point that you all have. I just utilize some of the surplus, so the surplus goes down to 1.375 million. But you all have to make the decision on the high school roof, what the final cost is going to be on that. So if it's more than that 1.375, then we're going to have to use MBTA money for the street signs project. That's $250,000. So next week you'll get the budget book, you'll get a comprehensive CIP presentation. 27th of April, you'll get the school's budget presentation, where you really got to dive deep, not just the high school roof, but the whole budget there. DSS and Parks and Rec will do a similar presentation as you received tonight from the other departments on their budget. And then after that, we're done with presentations, but there's meetings after that every Tuesday, and that's really for you all to, we'll of course, do the Q&A documents, right? So after you read the budget book, just let me know kind of what's been left out, what you want to know more of, and we can talk about the Q&A stuff at the meetings, but it's really then for you all to tell us what kind of edits you want to make on the budget, additions, subtractions, et cetera, so that we can get a budget advertised by mid-May. That's the goal.
Do you know if we're going to receive a hard copy of the school board budget?
I have no idea.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Would the governing body like further discussion, further questions? What is the will of the governing body? What would you like to do?
Adjourn.
Oh, I'm hearing that we need more think time.
Yeah.
We do. Okay.
That's a better way to put it.
Okay, we need to deliberate. Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, well, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstained, motion carries, we're adjourned. Thanks, everyone. And thank you, Laszlo. Keith, what did you do to your foot?
Yeah, I was wondering that.